Hello, fantasy baseball fans. I'm Paul Williamson. This is Fantasy MLB Today, a Sports Ethos presentation brought to you by FanDuel. As always, it's an honor and a privilege to give y'all this podcast, give y'all some information that will help you win your leagues, give your teams a boost. We got a special episode today. MLB Trade Deadline was today on Monday. And I got Nathan Baker of El Extra Gente and Sports Ethos joining us, along with Britton, Allan of the Pallazzo Podcast on YouTube. First, Nathan, man, how are you doing today, my dude?
Doing great. Excited for the trade deadline. Tons of action so far. One of the craziest deadlines I can remember. And we've got 15 minutes to go and an hour breaking trades after. So excited to get after it.
Yeah, lots of rumors of last-minute deals. You can find Nathan Baker on Twitter at NBakerNGB. That's at NBakerNGB. And he writes for El Extra Gente. And then we got Britton, Allan of the Pallazzo Podcast on YouTube. Britton, man, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. This is legitimately exciting. As there's 30 minutes left for the trade deadline. Things are happening left and right. And the best part about it is that there are trades that are legitimately what the F are they thinking? We'll get into that, but I love trades that make no sense. And they got plenty of those coming in. It's pretty fun. Thank you for having me too, by the way. Paul, Nathan, always a pleasure to see you too.
Yes.
Right on, Britton. One thing I forgot to write down, Britton, what is your socials, people you can find you?
I just have my name. It's just my name. I keep it real simple. It's BrittonAllan. Follow me on Twitter. I have a fantasy baseball podcast with Michael Govier and Mike Virginia. It's called the Pallazzo Podcast. 2 L's, 2 Z's is what we say. So if you would, just give me a follow because I always post it there. And if you like fantasy baseball, I think you'll like our podcast.
Yeah, it's a fun podcast, man. Y'all have I love what y'all do. It's a different podcast, a different vibe than any other podcast out there, and I absolutely love it, man. So make sure you go check them out on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts over there, y'all. All right, so let's dive into let's talk about some big picture stuff here. Let's talk about some FanDuel bets for some end of season stuff. Britton, you said you had a fun one. Well, what were you looking at?
I was looking at my FanDuel account today because one of my favorite trades that has happened today, well, 2 of my favorite trades involve the Tampa Bay Rays. All right. They're winning their division currently. They're over the Yankees, over the Red Sox. So the Tampa Bay Rays to win the World Series is plus 1,400. So for every $100 you bet, you get $1,400 back at FanDuel.com. I'm like, gambling's legal in Tennessee, but I'm going to retire because I'm going to bet all this money on the Tampa Bay Rays because they got Liam Hicks, who is a breakout that's going to bat fourth for them. And they also got Freddie Peralta, who they're going to fix now that he's left the Mets because everything that goes to the Mets gets worse. But then when the players leave the Mets, they get better. And I think the Tampa Bay Rays plus 1,400 at FanDuel is money in the bank. What do you think?
Good.
Love that. Plus 1,400. I'm a believer in Tampa. I mean, Peralta's the most obvious guy that they're going to fix ever, right? I mean, the guy's been, 5-and-fly pitcher, but a great 5-and-fly pitcher. Goes to the Mets, try and get him deeper into games, fails miserably. Then, I mean, it's going to work out. And the one thing that Tampa has now, which they've never had in many of the good renditions of Tampa Bay teams, is they have a legitimate starting rotation of guys that can give you 5 or 6 really good innings before they tap into that bullpen. So they've always
Nathan, I hate to break you up, man. We got a trade, buddy. Lars Nootbaar going to the Diamondbacks per Jorge Castillo of ESPN. Anybody listen to the podcast for me, man? I'm a Lars Nootbaar truther. I love Lars Nootbaar, and this dude's got bat speed. The only thing he has to do, he did it last year, is keep the ball out of the damn dirt. That's all he's got to do. He did it last year. He did a great job of it last year. And it regressed some this year so far, but not horrible. And I think that this is a great get for the Diamondbacks, y'all. I'm trying to look up what their StatCast factors are for lefties. What are y'all's initial thoughts on this one? Start with you, Britton.
Yeah, Lars Nootbaar is a great ad because he's still got team control. So he's got this year, and then he's arbitration next year, and then he's a free agent. So he's still a controllable asset, which is what you want. So it's not like a rental situation. He can play left field. He can play right field. He can play center field. any and all of those outfielder positions, he can plug and play. He's only 28 years old, so I thought he was a little bit older than that. So, he's in the prime of his career, and he's always been a good hitter. So not the world's most power hitting outfielder. He's only got 3 home runs this year, but still he was injured a little bit of the year, but a little bit of steals. He does have a little bit of pop. He was projected to hit 15 this year, so he should be a contributor across the board. I like Lars Nootbaar a lot. What do you think, Nathan?
Yeah, I like him a lot too. I mean, at his best, he's a quintessential leadoff guy. He gets on base. There's enough pop to threaten you. He can steal when he wants to. Of course, Arizona has plenty of firepower at the top of the order. The one thing I'd like to see is the return. He to me is a perfect buy low guy for the D-backs if they're not paying this crazy deadline premium that everybody else seems to be paying all of a sudden. And they've got right-handed outfielders. Like maybe there's a platoon between Waldschmidt and Nootbaar to some degree down the stretch. But it's a nice guy to buy low. The Cardinals clearly haven't seen him as someone that they're going forward with. They've tried to trade him for like 2 years now. So I guess this is the time because they finally have a crazy seller's market. But I'm interested to see the return. If it's not much, I'm happy with it.
Yeah, it does seem to be that this is the trade deadline to sell to try to sell off your post hype prospects, right? See what kind of return you can get, because we all know about the potential of Lars Nootbaar, but if the Diamondbacks can reload a couple extra prospects, they probably wouldn't have gotten really any other time in any other universe at this particular time because man, it's like you said, it's the sellers market. I mean, my God, this is the reason why I kind of wanted the Astros to be sellers because of my God, could you imagine the return they would get for someone like Pena in this market? You imagine the return they would get for someone like the Yonder Diaz, where they're trying to go after catchers. Like I hate selling. I'm an Astros fan, but my God, you could have reloaded the farm system so nicely this year. And anyways, I'm going on the diatribe here. While I'm waiting for Fangraphs to load. But yeah, I'm trying to find that ground ball number because that's the big thing with Nootbaar is the ground balls.
Yeah, he's been known to slam that sucker down in the ground. Yeah, that's kind of been. But if you look at his history, 2025, 2024, he's around the 14 home run per season. So. He's done it before. He just needs to, get a little bit more lift on that bad boy.
Yeah, because he's got the barrel rates, he's got the hard hit rates, he's got the bat speed. Freaking, let's see here. The hit tool is, if I remember, it's pretty good. Yeah, excellent. He has 6.4% of swinging strike rate. All the swinging strike rates are single digits. A great hit tool, hits the ball really hard. If he can, it's a 48% ground ball rate. It was 37% last year. If he can just get that number to the low 40s, I think he's a guy that can hit 25 home runs. Now, the Diamondbacks home ballpark is like a 73 grade on the home runs. So he absolutely has to get some lift here because he's got the barrel rates, the hard hit rates in order to produce power in any park. But he's putting the ball on the ground, it's not going to matter. Absolutely. Definitely want to see what the return is because I got to imagine for a controllable outfitter with some power potential, it's going to be a decent return for the Diamondbacks. So we'll have to wait and see on that. So let's get back into to make sure there's no other trade here, not that I've seen. Okay. So let's get back to the FanDuel stuff. Anything else you want to say on the 14 plus 1,400 bet on the Rays there, Nathan, before we move on to your bet?
No, not really, other than their rotation is actually really good now. And I think that gives them a better chance than bullpen limbo for, every game in the playoffs -1. So between if they have healthy McClanahan, Peralta and Rasmussen and now Griffin Jacks being like a legit starting pitcher, like that's a serious rotation.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And what's funny is that like my FanDuel bet selection that I had is kind of ties into this a little bit. I like the plus 140 odds for the Yankees to win that division. They're currently 2.5 games out. And the fact that they went out and got Luis Garcia, like me and Nathan talked about on our last podcast, that is a signal that they've got confidence in the health of guys like Judge and Bellinger to come back for a playoff run. because I don't think they would have bought if those guys weren't going to come back. And so I think that these guys are going to come back in time to help this team. I think Garcia is going to be a great plug there. And I think the Rays are built better for the playoffs than they are for a larger sample of the regular season, because I think Liam Hicks' hit tool plays well in the playoffs. I think Freddie Peralta and Tropicana is going to be great in the playoffs. But for the rest of the season, I don't think Hicks is a great fit in Tropicana Field. I think that is going to be a little rough for him long term. But a guy that doesn't strike out and is hard out in the playoffs is massive there. So I do still like the World Series pick, even though I think the Yankees are going to catch up to him in the AL East and win that division. But in terms of the playoffs, you're talking about a 7-game series. The sample size is so much smaller. I love a guy like Liam Hicks in that scenario because he's a hard out. You can't. The Yankees are filled with massive strikeout arms that are going to, that if the Rays though don't comply to the strikeouts and they improve their hit tool as a team with the addition of guys like Liam Hicks, their rotation is deeper. Rotation wins playoff games more than hitting does. And so yes, though I still love the pick. But at the end of the day, I do still think the Yankees win this division. What are y'all's thoughts on that? We'll go to you, Nathan, first.
Sure. Well, a couple pieces of breaking news I'll accompany with that, and some of them actually are relevant to my own FanDuel bet. First of all, I do think the Yankees are the strongest team in the American League East, and I personally would bet on them. The challenge is you don't know when their hitters are going to be back. Now, the breaking news, Nathaniel Lowe is being traded to the Guardians from Cincinnati, of course, and which will be related to my own FanDuel bet. And the Marlins are getting Victor Vodnik in a deal that's going to send Connor Norby back to the Rockies, which is interesting because, of course, Norby was part of that Rogers return a couple of years ago. Him at Coors Field, I feel like goes from someone that's like a bit of an afterthought to someone that you really want to pay attention to fantasy-wise. And Vodnik goes from someone who's an afterthought to someone you want to pay attention to. I mean, he's got closer stuff. But on the subject of the American League East, I think the Yankees are built to do the best in the playoffs. But it's just, when does Judge come back? What is he when he does come back? When does Stanton come back? Do they get the best version of Heliot Ramos now that they've acquired him? They're also rumored to be interested in acquiring another right-handed hitter and maybe another reliever. And the deadline technically ends in 1 minute. So we'll obviously see what trickles through afterwards. But interested to hear your take, Britton, about not only American League East, but whether you think the Yankees got to have what it takes to catch Tampa Bay if their guys get healthy.
Oh, definitely. If Aaron Judge is up and back in hitting and running and all that fun stuff, then definitely they're a contender because he's literally one of the best players in baseball. But so they traded for Ramos for the Giants. So that's another outfielder. Does that kind of signal that maybe they're not so sure when he's coming back? So they went out and got another outfielder, which is fine. He's a talented. Heliot Ramos is a talented player, but I don't know. I mean, they have Spencer Jones. I hope they don't put Spencer on the bench, right? And, of course, they've got Trent Grisham playing center. So Spencer Jones, Trent Grisham, and now they got Ramos. I guess Ramos will play left, and we'll see what happens after that. But, yeah, the main thing about the Yankees is their rotation. Max Fried, who's awesome. Garrett Cole, he's looking like he's picked it back right where he left off. And Cy Young, maybe contender Cam Schlittler, who's been having a breakout, bust-out season. So you got those three main guys that can easily pitch lights out. So I guess that's why Tampa Bay is plus 1,400.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how. I mean, that's got to be the best starting three. Fried, Cole, and Schlittler. So yeah, I get it. But but like you said, like you guys said, a lot of it has to do with Judge. If Judge is in there playing every day, it needs to be plus 5,000 for the Tampa Bay Rays. Because if Aaron Judge is hitting in the middle or top three in that lineup with Ben Rice, they're going to be real tough to beat, very tough to beat the New York.
And to that end, a little more news: the Yankees are reportedly have not made any other trades. But Casey Mize is going to the Padres and Kirby Yates is going to the Pirates in that span of things. So a couple of more fairly interesting ones. Yates especially could be at the back end of that bullpen. But I think it makes your Tampa Bay Rays bet even better that the Yankees, Oh, and the Pirates are also getting Lake Bacher, the slider-heavy reliever from the Marlins. So Pittsburgh not happy with their bullpen, obviously, and but I think it makes the Rays bet even better. The fact the Yankees didn't go out and make a huge splash for another reliever or go get a big-time catcher. I know they checked in on Francisco Alvarez and Tyler Stevenson, so I'm thrilled Alvarez isn't leaving. I'm hoping, at least. I don't think he is. The price is massive, but nonetheless, it's a huge deadline for the Yankees. Now, Paul, do you think what do you? I'm interested to hear what you guys think about the Pirates making their entire new bullpen between Weaver and Yates and Bacher. Anyone there that you feel like should be a priority add beyond, of course, Weaver, who they've said is the closer?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely Weaver's the closer. Now Yates will not be the closer, but Yates I think is a very intriguing pickup for holds leagues. If you go and take a look at his numbers since I believe June 1st, it's like a near 30% strikeout rate with a really good walk rate. The ERA is well under control. The dude has had a nice little run, a very quietly good season there in LA. I think he is. I don't think he's the dominant guy he was when he was a closer with the Rangers, but I think he's still got something in there where he can be a really good late inning guy. And then also, so you got Yates, and then also Lake Bacher, I think, is the underlay guy. Like you say, that slider is so filthy from him. And then of course, Weaver. Like Weaver's the guy, right? Weaver is the closer for Pittsburgh. There is no doubt about that in my mind. And so now they have a good bullpen, a really good bullpen. It's Weaver at the top, Mason Montgomery, Kirby Yates, Gregory Soto. They got guys now. I think this is exactly what the Pirates needed. They needed to rebuild and restructure that bullpen because the offense has been solid. We know the rotation is great. Now they've got the bullpen to match. And so I think that's great. One quick note, though, I'm going to go back to the Nathaniel Lowe trade. A lefty bat in Cleveland? Yeah, yes, please. That's a solid deep league ad right now. He's the kind of guy that can catch fire and even sneak on the 12-team radars, people who may not be paying attention. And so anytime a lefty power bat goes to Cleveland, my ears perk up because that is a great spot for him. They're giving themselves extra options because of the fluctuations of Kyle Manzardo there at first base. I think Lau provides them a nice safety blanket, a nice safer bat to have in that lineup to pair up with Joe Adell. We'll get into Adell later, but I think that's a crazy, sneaky one there as well. And then the Padres. That's a solid one, man. Been really solid this year. The Padres been a mystery team in this trade deadline. Mystery no more. They bought, and they didn't get rid of Morajan. They didn't get rid of Miller. They kept that bullpen intact. They added on to the rotation, and so they decided to buy. And it's intriguing because the Dodgers are so freaking good now. It's fun to see these teams are stepping up and trying to mount some type of resistance to the Dodgers. Britton, let's bring it around to you, buddy. Any thoughts on these last-minute trades? Anything you want to add on to the FanDuel stuff? What are your thoughts on what we've been talking about?
No, I agree with you that the Padres have been buyers. They traded for Robbie Ray earlier today. So, and he's a lefty. So hopefully with these two additions, they don't have to depend on German Marquez as their SP2. So they can, put him in relief or wherever they want to put him. But so they got what they needed. They had Michael King, Walker Buehler, Robbie Ray. And so, because you look at their offense, they got Machado, Tatis, Ty France, Jackson Merrill, super solid. So they just needed to shore up their rotation, which they did, which also another team that I've been looking at is the Chicago Cubs. Have y'all noticed, because there's so many trades coming fast and furious, what the Chicago Cubs have done to their rotation? They added Kevin Gausman. Yeah. And believe it or not, it's huge. And they didn't give up much for him. They really didn't. Yeah. So Kevin Gausman is now a Chicago Cub, and believe it or not, David Peterson, who was with the Mets, now with the Cubs, who they traded for, he's been pitching really well, believe it or not, and so they turned him around too. So Yeah, so some of these contending teams are really going for it. I haven't seen this. I don't. It could be recency bias, but have you guys seen like this many trades at a trade deadline like this recently? This is blowing my mind.
Yeah, it's super condensed at the end, and I think that part of it is just the teams are trying to wait out the buyers, trying to wait out the sellers, and see if they can get some of those prices down, and they just never came down. So eventually, it was either you overpay or you get snubbed, and you don't address some needs. But agreement on the Cubs rotation. I mean, Peterson basically the same metrics, but you go from the Mets infield defense, especially with Francisco Lindor injured for most of the time, to the Cubs infield defense, which is the best in baseball. And for a ground ball pitcher, it makes a world of difference. And Clay Holmes is going to get the same benefit. You're going to have Clay Holmes now, like almost a 60% ground ball guy with a Gold Glove shortstop, Bregman, who's tremendous at third, Horner's great up the middle at second. So I love their idea. They don't need to overpay for the strikeout guys. They got the gloves, the best center fielder in baseball to go get it too. So it's a philosophy that fits with the team as a whole.
That's a great point because the Cubs defense is one of the best in Major League. And because of the infield you're talking about, and Pete Crow Armstrong catches everything in the outfield. So, yeah, that really does help out all those pitchers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All righty, y'all. So it looks like it is passed. We've got the last minute deals in the door. Nothing new popping up on my end. So let's kind of reset things. So we'll try to go back to the first major domino to fall, the Tariq Skubal going to the Dodgers for Zaire Hope, Brady Smith, and River Ryan. So Britton, we'll pass it to you. What are your overall thoughts on this trade? Is this does this help or is it the lateral move for Skubal's fantasy value? If there could be any improvement at all to where it already was, and what are your thoughts on the return? Did the Tigers get enough?
I think they did. I think this was a very reasonable trade. So Tariq Skubal is, we all know, I'll just repeat it, is going to be a free agent after this year. He's during he got ARB money for like $32 million a year. Pretty big price tag. So I don't think the Detroit Tigers were going to be able to re-sign him. So that they didn't have to. They could have tried to make a run, but I think they did the wise thing and cashed him in for Zaire Hope, who is a great outfield prospect. Zaire Hope is probably going to start for the Detroit Tigers next year in the outfield. And when you think about the Tigers too, though, they're not like completely out of it or anything like that, but I think it's a great idea to shoot for next year because you just promoted Max Clark, who looks legit. You promoted Kevin McGonigal, for opening day, who was also legit. And now you've got Zaire Hope in there too. And River Ryan, he's had struggled with injury, but his stuff is ace level when he's healthy. So I like what the Tigers did. I think some people thought the return was light. I didn't think so, but because you have to remember, or I tell myself, Skubal had elbow surgery this year. It's not like he's, a 25 clean bill of health guy. The Dodgers, it's kind of a little risky too, in my opinion, because I know Skubal, they have MRIs and doctors take a look, but if that elbow gets cranky, he's not telling anybody. He's trying to get a 10-year, $500 million contract, Tariq Skubal. So it's in his financial interest to make sure everybody thinks his elbow is okay. Not saying that there's anything wrong, but on the flip side, the Dodgers get what they wanted, which is an ace that's going to win playoff games for them. That's what he's going to win playoff games and help them secure the division. So I like the trade from both sides. I really do. Nathan, what do you think?
Well, it depends on whether we're talking real life value or fantasy, because from a fantasy value perspective, I don't particularly love it, but at real life value, I think it's great. Now, I know I spoke to someone from another National League team that was interested in Skubal, who had concerns over the medicals with him. And I know there were more than one team that had worries about whether his elbow was as healthy as it was made out to be, which of course is a concern when you're trading for a rental. He needs to be available for the next 3 months or you get nothing out of it. But I think the process for the Tigers was, if you're talking about the three most interested teams, the top prospects, you go to the Rays and the Rays aren't going to trade you Theo Gillen. And you go to the Brewers and they're not going to trade you Jesus Mate. then Zaire Hope is a better prospect than the second best prospect from Milwaukee or from Tampa Bay. So in terms of an individual, he is the best guy you're going to get. And then to get River Ryan, who I know he's old, yeah, sure, whatever, but has great stuff. And the Tigers probably put him in the rotation at some point this season. And Smith, I don't know as much about personally, but I think Hope is an all-star potential player. Like there's a little, the defense needs to be refined. He's got the athleticism to play good defense. It just hasn't quite come yet. And the strikeout's got to be cut down a bit. But like his ceiling is perennial all-star type ceiling. And for a couple months of a guy with maybe an elbow problem, I mean, it's a great, now from the flip side, the Dodgers, this is like the most ridiculous insurance policy you will ever see. Like the Dodgers do not need Scooble. But just in case Ohtani can't pitch, or Snell, or Glasnow, you've now got Shohei, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Snell, Scooble, and that's not to mention you've got Robleski still in the rotation, who's an all-star this year. Like Robleski's been fantastic. So they just acquired Chris Bubich today, which is another tool, I think, predominantly to combat some of the left-handed heavy lineups they could face in the playoffs out of the bullpen. But their team, like they have basically guaranteed themselves that every single game that the Dodgers play in the playoffs, even with an injury, they will have a bona fide ace on the mound. No matter what, it's going to be an ace. And if they're all healthy, you're going to get a Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow piggyback in Game 4. So good luck beating that with your fourth starter. Yeah, it's outrageous.
and they got their closer, their stud closer back, Edwin Diaz.
Yeah. Man. It's one of those things where it's like I don't think I could have come up with a better roster on MLB The Show in terms of like you said, that's 5 aces plus Robleski, plus Emmett Sheehan. I mean that they held on. I mean for the future they still got guys like Gavin Stone, and it's insane how good they are. And for me, from the Tigers' perspective, I don't know why they pulled the trigger so quickly. Like they pulled this trigger of one of the first trades to drop. You know, maybe as the trade deadline went along, a team like the Brewers or somebody would have felt the pressure a little bit more to let go of their top prospect. Maybe another team swoops in the last minute, but it feels like they just wanted to get it done with. And I wonder if that cost them anything, because it's when I first saw the trade, when I saw the Dodgers, I was like, all right. DePaula. And then I saw those no DePaula. I'm like, oh, well, the Dodgers fucking won this one. And then I look at it, it's Zaire Hope plus River Ryan. And Brady Smith ain't bad. He's a decent pitchability kind of guy that looks like he could be a mid-rotation dude. And, so they got some legit pieces. The value of the vacuum, I think, is good. But I think the long-term, though, the hate for the Dodgers is amazing. It's great right now.
Yeah.
Y'all think this impacts the labor negotiations in terms of we got to get this cap under control, the money spending out of control, or not? Britton, what are your thoughts?
Man, that question is way over my pay grade. Like I don't know. It seems to me though that whatever happens, things can be grandfathered in. I would guess, or there'd be some type of somebody smarter than me can figure that out. I don't think so. Is there going to be a lockout? Probably for at least some period of time. But at the end of the day, there's too much money at stake, right? They're going to get it figured out. Or am I just dreamcasting, Nathan? What do you think?
Well, so I read the pressure here is on the owners, because ultimately, the proposition that the owners want is a salary cap system, and that inherently would come with a salary floor. Now, that would suppress player salaries so heavily that it is actually worth it for the players to miss out on a season or two financially. In the long run, they'd be better off. Even if they had to stay locked out to 2029, the owners cannot afford to do that. So what's going to happen at some point is the owners are going to say, we need a salary cap, and the players are going to say no. And at some point, the owners will realize that the players aren't budging. And they'll say, okay, how do we get some competitive balance without the salary cap? Because the salary cap's a non-starter. Players Association is too strong. They'll never agree to it. As long as the owners decide that they want to stay on that, at this unrealistic desire, we'll have no baseball. But I agree with you. I don't think we see an extended lockout. Do we miss games? Maybe, probably. Is there a 2027 season? I'd be surprised if the owners didn't get something done so it could happen, because that's hundreds of millions, billions of dollars for some teams that they're missing out on by not playing. So I think realistically, we're probably looking at just some more baseball penalties for going over the top level of the luxury tax. Right now it's just your picks get bumped back a bit. So maybe there'll be, start losing draft picks if you're over that the Cohen threshold, as they call it. But I don't expect there to be like no 27 season. The owners, I think, will realize the writing's on the wall. They don't have the leverage here, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at a salary cap. So it's going to be some other solution.
Right on, guys. Well, let's move on here. Let's talk now Freddie Peralta going to the Tampa Bay Rays for Aiden Smith, and I'm going to butcher these names, Emilian Petrie and Gary Gil-Hill. We'll start with you, Britton. What are your thoughts on this, both on the MLB side, Peralta, and any thoughts on the prospects?
Yeah, so Freddie Peralta with the Mets, well, it was struggled this year. I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. It's not been a great year for Freddie Peralta at all. But the good news is he's going to the Tampa Bay Rays, who have one of the best pitching coaches in Major League Baseball. And one thing that made Freddie Peralta so effective, especially when he was with the Brewers, was his changeup. And what do the Tampa Bay Rays specialize in? Changeups. That's why all their pitchers are so successful, is because they have a system, in the coaching to really fine tune that pitch. That particular pitch is what I think made Freddie Peralta so good in Milwaukee, and now he's at Tampa Bay, and they're going to fix that pitch for him, or help him fix that pitch. So the return they didn't have to give up any of their top prospects or anything like that. So, I think it's great. I think this is a great trade for the Tampa Bay Rays.
Completely in agreement. I love this from the Rays perspective. The same way that I kind of view Skubal as kind of declining in value with the Dodgers. I never actually got to explain. I will briefly. Basically, the Dodgers are going to win the division at the beginning of September, and they don't need to use Skubal more than 80 pitches once a week. So the fantasy starts that he's given you in your fantasy playoffs aren't much. The Tampa Bay Rays are in a divisional race. They need to win games. Freddie Peralta has all of the talent to put up a 2.832, somewhere in ERA in the high twos, low threes. Not only just changeups, but right on right changeups and left on left changeups. They love teaching the same sided changeup, which is not really a pitch that a lot of hitters see. So it's strange. Of course, there's danger. If you leave it up in the zone, it's easier to hit. But Peralta, just as I said earlier, it's such an obvious success. I think the return is better than people give it credit for. But there's no question that the Peralta the Mets failed with Peralta. Thankfully, it was a seller's market. They got some more than they probably would have otherwise. But he'll come good for the Rays for sure.
Yeah, I ditto what you're saying. So looking at the specifics of the pitch mix here, you talked about the changeup already, how they need to fix that. That whiff rate on that changeup has dropped down to under 30% on the whiff rate. While the pitch mix itself, it's about a mile down on the velocity, but he gained vertical drop and horizontal break to it, so that might help offset it. But I think you're right, though. I mean, look at what they've done with Nick Martinez and his changeup, and the way he's been able to dominate that way. And I think you're absolutely right, because the curveball and the sleeper slider still have 30+ whip rates on it. And so if he can get that changeup to work again, pitching in Tropicana Field, then I think he can be in for a real nice second half. I love the trade for the Rays. The return is solid. I mean, Aiden Smith is a rock solid prospect, and Gary Gil-Hill is someone who I can't quit. I was in on him a couple years ago when he was in low A ball, a youngster getting a lot of ground balls and swing and miss. The swing and miss has kind of gone away. The ground balls are still there. Reminds me of like a Walbert Urena or a Jose Soriano type in terms of being a high ground ball pitcher that is showing some flashes of swing and miss. So I think there is he's kind of an underrated prospect in my opinion. I keep my eye on Gary Gil-Hill for my dynasty league. But yeah, no. And the thing is that like the Rays defense are second in defensive run saved. And so you got a great ballpark, a great defense, a pitching coaching staff that can get that change up to get back to where it was. I think it's a great move for Peralta and the Rays. Any additional thoughts on either of y'all before we move on to the next deal?
No, that's great. Y'all covered it.
And on Gary Gilhill, 80 grade name. I personally don't know as much as you do about him, but if his name is anything to go by, he's going to be a 100 complete game Hall of Famer, and he'll be in Cooperstown with his name up in the flag.
Nice. I'm with you, man. Gary, that's a great. It comes off the tongue so nicely. All right, so we'll move on to the next deal. Left-handed power bat Luis Garcia Jr. going to the Yankees, and let's see here. The exchange is Giovanni Cruz, Jake Bird, Jack Serbert, and Ben Grable. So, Britton, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on this trade?
Man, I love it for the Yankees, and I say that with a little bit of, oh, well, yeah, here we go. Yankees got another lefty power bat that can hit, that short right down that right field line is like shorter than, Cincinnati. It's just like, it's a beautiful place to hit if you're a lefty bat. They called up Spencer Jones, who's also a lefty. So, I mean, they've got the three ace starters. Okay, you've got Fried, Cole, Schlittler that we talked about, and now if Judge comes back with Luis Garcia Jr., Spencer Jones, now you got these lefty power bats. I know they play at games other than Yankee Stadium, but still, Luis Garcia Jr. from the Washington Nationals has broken out this year on every single level. You look at all his metrics. It's everything's up. So good for the Nationals in a sense, who they're at the not going to have the pitching or anything to make a playoff run. So they kind of capitalized on Luis Garcia Jr.'s breakout season. And I hate to say it, but good for the Yankees too, because now they got another power lefty bat that can bat third for them. High of the order type bat, and he steals bases too. So he's not just a one trick pony. But what do you think, Nathan? Do you like Luis Garcia Jr. to the Yankees?
Yeah, I like Garcia Jr., and I like their entire deadline. I think Brian Cashman did a great job in a tough market, minus the catcher, but we'll get to that in a minute. Garcia Jr. is a perfect fit for that team, though. I mean, the way that I look at it is right now they need the right-handed bat more. But this team, if the Yankees are going to be a World Series competitor, a World Series winner, that left-handed bat in the middle of the order, to have Rice, Garcia Jr., Judge, and Stanton, which might be tough to get them all on the field. Maybe they concede and have Ben Rice cash at some point, is an incredible set of four hitters who against righties are elite. Against lefties, sure, yeah, Garcia Jr. doesn't give you much, but good luck trying to have a lefty get Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton out in the playoffs with Garcia Jr. in between. He's got the best protection for any left-handed hitter in baseball. So I think it's actually one of the only moves that could have increased his fantasy value, coming from a great lineup in Washington. And from the Yankees' perspective, there's this obsession about handedness or positional need. And sometimes you just got to go get the best player. And he is the best middle of the order bat they could have gotten. I like to get for the Nationals, too. Again, a couple guys who I think will be fixtures in the bullpen and a good starting pitcher in there as well. And Jake Bird is nothing. But I think it's great. He used to be good, but the numbers aren't there. But I think it's a great get for the Yankees. I again, not exactly a Yankee fan myself, but I honestly, I give that deal an A. It's a beautiful.
That was hilarious. I thought the same thing too. That I was like, that Jake Bird, or is this a different Jake Bird? But it's that Jake Bird.
It is that Jake Bird. Yeah,
right. You're right.
Yeah, and like you mentioned about them being able to play the matchups now. It looks like he's going to be platooning with Paul Goldschmidt at the DH spot, and then like you said, I think they've announced after the deadline or pretty soon before the deadline ended that they do not plan on moving Ben Rice to catcher. I think Aaron Boone said that. I think they're going to have no choice, especially if everyone comes back healthy. If they got a fully healthy squad, and in order to get everyone into the lineup, you got to put Ben Rice at catcher. I think they're going to have no choice but to do it. So, they say that now on August 3rd, but come October, come playoff time, when push comes to shove and their best lineup includes Ben Rice at catcher, and just call the pitches from the dugout, man. It'll be fine. And I think that would be I think they may not have a choice. But also, this also could mean that they don't have confidence that someone like Stanton is going to be healthy enough to come back. Now, I think that this does signal that Aaron Judge is probably going to be back. I don't think they would have been this aggressive if Aaron Judge was not going to be back, because at the end of the day, he is the biggest difference maker for that squad. And if they thought that he wasn't going to be back this year, I don't think they would have been this aggressive. So I think that means that this means Judge will be back, and to a lesser extent, they're confident that Bellinger will be back. And I think the Yankees will be ready to rock and roll. Giovanni Cruz, I think, is someone that can definitely take that closer spot away from Clayton Beeter if he gets the shot. But don't sleep on Beeter in general, though. Beeter has significantly improved the swing and miss over the last month or two. Has that swing and strike rate up above 12% lately, and I think that, and I wouldn't be so quick to pick up Giovanni Cruz. I think he's more of a deeply speculative ad right now than anything. Anything else on this deal before we move on?
Yeah, one thing I just did a quick little Google search to see if there have been any updates on Aaron Judge, because just like you guys said, I mean, he's the key.
Yeah.
He's the key to the success or failure of the New York Yankees. And he's been sidelined since late May or early June with a stress fracture in his rib. And Aaron Boone just said recently that there's no re-imaging date for Aaron Judge. Like, what's the timetable here? They're being very, very, very vague about Aaron Judge's health status. And if y'all know anything else, please let me know. But I don't know. This isn't looking good. What do you think, Nathan? Do you have any? Have you heard anything about Aaron Judge?
I have no information, unfortunately, other than what's public, which is just that the Yankees might be keeping it under wraps until post deadline, at least, to try and remove any leverage that teams might assert. They worried that obviously if it's public, the Judge is out for the year, or out for an extended period, I could work against them in the trade market. But it's concerning because he's the guy that's going to be in the middle of that order if they're winning anything. I guess they've got more of an insurance policy now, but there's no such thing as an insurance policy for Aaron Judge. Like, you can replace production, but there is no backup for that. So the one idea on Garcia that I wanted to mention before we move on, I do think it's possible that if the Yankees had everyone healthy, which again is a long shot, Stanton's hurt all the time, Judge, we have no idea. It could be weeks, months, or the year. But Garcia Jr. could theoretically be shoehorned at third base, which I knew he's taken ground balls there in the past. And Garcia Jr. at third with Rice at first base, Stanton DHing, Judge in the outfield, or even Goldschmidt first, Rice catching, and Stanton DHing could allow them to get their best bats in the lineup. And, McMahon's a good defender, but it's not like Ahmed Rosario is, Brooks Robinson over there at third base. So they'd probably be losing something defensively. But at some point, like, get your best bats in the lineup. Okay, just don't do it with Max Fried on the mound. You'll be all right.
Yeah, that's what interesting. Garcia Jr. at third. That would solve a lot of their problems. That would solve the Ryan McMahon problem, that's for sure. And the last I checked, McMahon's defensive metrics they weren't bad, but they had definitely regressed from what he once was. So yeah, that'd be really interesting to see if they can, if that would happen. That certainly would help the log jam there. So let's moving on here. Let's see. Going with Kevin Gossman. Going to the Cubs, getting Brett Bateman and Ty Sutenstein in return. Nathan, let's start with you this time. What are your thoughts on this deal?
So, a lot of people kind of looked at this deal as like, oh, well, the return's light. But the way that I look at it, Gausman has been a great pitcher for a long time, but he doesn't really profile as a guy who's likely to age too well. And we've started to see some cracks in the armor for a guy who's been a great pitcher for a long time. He's a 3-pitch guy. His game really is predicated on fastballs in the strike zone and swings at splitters out of the zone. But with decline in velocity and decline in fastball shape comes more reaction time. You don't have to start as soon to catch up with the heater, which means that you're not getting as much chase on the split. So to me, Gausman, it's a good acquisition, but I think really his utility is probably more of like a 5-and-fly guy for playoff purposes. Now, I love it for the Cubs' point of view because they just needed warm bodies in the rotation. Gausman's a veteran pitcher. He knows how to pitch in the postseason. I think he can still give you representative starts, but I don't think he's quite what he used to be. a lot of people I know have pinned him for, bounce back. The Cubs defense is going to help any pitcher, but I don't think the ballpark's going to help Gausman either. And so, decent get for the Cubs, but not someone I'm really excited about, especially relative to some of Chicago's other acquisitions.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, but I will say this, as I'm not a big believer in Kevin Gausman at all. I think he's just kind of busted a little bit, but he is an upgrade over Javier Assad. No offense, Mr. Assad. You're a Major League Baseball player with a Major League Baseball contract, so congratulations. And Colin Ray. So Gausman is without even a shadow of a doubt, an upgrade over those two people, to players currently in the rotation. So I give him kudos for that. But what's funny is that when I first read about the details of this trade, and so I saw Suthasine, and I was like, yes, he's like a top 20 prospect. I'm like, they traded a top 20 prospect to get old busted rental Kevin Gausman. And then I read the fine print, and I didn't realize this, but there are two South scenes, and I know I'm butchering that. My apologies. There are two. One is Tate, who is the older brother, who is a shortstop for Atlanta. And of course, they're not trading with Atlanta. So anyway, I just had a little panic attack when I first read that, getting free, because I was confused. I was like, wait a minute, because that Sol scene is not like a it's not like John Smith being traded. So I was like, oh, wait a minute, no. But anyway, long story short, but no, totally different. Ty Sooth scene that was in the Gausman trade for the Cubs, nowhere close to Tate's level. But that was funny. That was my first reaction. I was like, what?
Right. Yeah, that would have been nuts. That would have been crazy. But I wanna be a little more optimistic here on Kevin Gausman than y'all are. I think that he still has swing and miss, got a 12.3% swing and strike rate. That split figure should induce plenty of weak contact. I mean, the barrel rate and the hard hit rates are all still pretty low for him. The strikeout to walk numbers are pretty solid, 23% on the strikeout, around 8% on the actually better than that on the walk rate. So good strikeout to walk numbers, swing and miss is there. The ground ball number isn't very high, but that split finger should induce plenty of soft contact and chase outside the zone to matter. That defense is incredible. The Cubs should get him some wins. So from a fantasy perspective, I think that just the upgraded defense to help his ratios out a little bit and getting some win chances for the Cubs, I think this dude has at least top 50 upside rest of season for fantasy. And with that swing and miss, I mean, it's a 23% strikeout rate. It's pretty solid. He could eat some innings to accumulate some strikeouts. I think this is pretty good, both in real life and in fantasy for Gausman. I feel like I'm a bit of the outlier between the three of us. But what are y'all's thoughts on my optimism here? Let's start with you, Britton.
No, you're right, and I shouldn't. When you made a really good point. When you look at his underlying metrics, it's a lot more positive than his results have been so far this season. But of course, I just look at him just laboring up there in Toronto. But you're right. This is a fresh new start with the Cubs. The Cubs are in contention. The Blue Jays have just been pretty much a disaster this year after making it to the World Series and almost winning the World Series, by the way. But everything it's just not working this year, including our friend or my good friend Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who's having the one of the worst seasons of his career. Which may be injury related, we don't know. But anyway, go off on a tangent there. So yeah, you're right. Kevin Gausman, like we said, he's an upgrade for the Cubs. No doubt about it. He's durable. He's healthy by all accounts. So yeah, I think you're right. I was a little too down when I called him old and busted, which you could also call me that, but I'm a lot more accurate. I'm not a Major League Baseball player. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for Kevin Gausman at the Cubs. What do you say, Nathan?
Well, yeah, it's a fair point to note that he's still getting tons of whiff on the splitter. And the splitter, I think until the end of time, Gausman can play till he's 45 and he'll get some whiff on the splitter. It's an amazing pitch, and it's not going away. But my concern really is his game being predicated on hitters swinging at his splitter and not his fastball. That he wants to throw fastballs for strikes that people take and splitters for balls that they swing at. And that's still happening to a degree, but it's happening less. And generally with pitchers who are, and I mean, he is more or less a 2-pitch pitcher. He's technically a 3-pitch pitcher, but he gets people out with 2 pitches. He needs people to swing as much at that splitter as possible. And the slope on the way down is a lot steeper for someone like Gausman, who's a fly ball guy who relies on strikeouts, rather than someone who'd be a ground ball machine where you're putting it in play anyway, but maybe it just gets a bit harder over time as they start to lose some steam. So my worry with him is that cliff is very steep. And once hitters have enough reaction time to where they're not having to take early decisions at Gausman's pitches and decide splitter or fastball, it's going to get really ugly really fast. Now, as I said earlier, I still think it's a good acquisition in that, like, he'll give you representative starts. But I think the difference with Gausman now compared to what he was years ago is that instead of looking at like a full 7-inning, like quality, almost ace adjacent start, it's going to be more of like a 5-and-fly type, where I think you'll get 5 solid innings from Gausman, but I don't think you're getting 7 strong with any regularity. The hitters have more reaction time, that they don't have to make early decisions. And the splitter, again, elite numbers, but there's more takes on it this year, and there's more swings at the fastball, which tells me that it's regressing. It's just not quite useless yet. He's just not, ace Kevin Gausman.
Yeah, not for you. And I want to emphasize top 50. I don't think he's like top 25, top 20. I think he's like because he used to be like a 15% swing strike rate guy. He ain't that anymore, obviously. But I think he's going to provide quality innings. I think he's someone that you would love to have as your game 3 or 4 starter in a playoff series. And a lot of teams are starting out a lot worse than Kevin Gausman in the middle of a playoff series when you get to think of it. Anything additional on Gausman? One real quick thing. Brett Bateman reminds me of Nico Horner, just in the outfield. And both these guys, honestly, excellent hit tool with lots of speed. If you get a home run, awesome. But at the end of the day, it's I guess they're emphasizing on base and hit tool people in Chicago or for Toronto. I mean, hey, it's worked out with guys like Ernie Clement, and obviously with the Alejandro Kirk, and we've seen the improvements Dalton Varsho made with his hit tool this year. They look like they're focusing on the hit tool side of things there in Toronto. So from that perspective, it kind of fits what I feel like they're trying to go for there. But while at the end of the day, it is still light, they aren't massive upside prospects, I do see the value in them. So yeah, anything additional on this trade before we move on to the next?
No, not at all. Can I mention one thing about the Cubs? And I believe Paul said something earlier. They traded Moises Ballesteros, who was like one of the best minor league hitters for years, for a reliever for the Angels. I believe it's Zephyr John is how you pronounce it. So I just wanted to bring up that real quick because I play a lot of draft and hold leagues, NFBC style, and I drafted my most drafted player was Moises Ballesteros. Because when you look at his track record in the minor leagues, it is spectacular. He's hit at every single level he's ever been to. And then when he got called up pretty quick for the Cubs, he started out hot and then looked into the abyss, and the abyss looked back into him, and then they had to send him back down. But you don't give up on a guy that young for a middle reliever. This is, we talked earlier about, this is one of those, what the F? But maybe it helps Ballesteros because, now he's over, they traded Logan O'Hoppe. So now maybe he can be a full-time player for the Angels. I don't know. I couldn't believe the Cubs traded him, not to get off on a Cubs tangent.
No.
So.
I agree with you, and I'll give you the argument as to what the Cubs will say, or Cubs fans or optimists will say, for why this is a good deal. And that is, well, twofold. One, which I believe, which is that I think Zephyr John's better than a middle reliever. He's a much tougher to hit than people give him credit for. His arm angle and his breaking stuff is very unique and is very tough, especially against right-handed hitters. So I think he can get outs for them in the 8th inning. Now, the argument for trading Ballesteros is that he's a positionless player that has hit, but there are flaws to his offensive game. He doesn't pull balls in the air. And ultimately, if you're not an elite hitter, then he has very little value as a positionless guy. Now, I would argue that trying to get him to be a competent catcher or even a competent first baseman is worth it with a guy with this much talent. And I honestly agree with Britton. I don't see why they gave up on Ballesteros for a relief pitcher, even an 8th inning reliever. I mean, hell, even if he was a pretty good closer, it still doesn't make sense. If you're getting a top closer, fair enough. But why are you giving up on a guy who's had, less than a full season of at-bats? They were having him catch behind the scenes, like trying to build him into a catcher program. If he's even an average defensive catcher, or even a little below average defensive catcher, look at the haul that we were talking about for not only Bradley Rutschman, which we'll get to later, but Francisco Alvarez is a below average defensive catcher this year. And teams were offering top 50 prospects in plurality. So to trade him for a relief pitcher just seems very premature.
Yeah, absolutely. And Britton, I think me and you in the offseason, we talked about Moises Ballesteros being one of our favorite sleeper picks this year. And because he's a talented hitter, I think that, even if he ends up being a DH, he has the potential to be an elite DH. He's someone that I think can be a massive haul. Now the question is, in terms of his dynasty fantasy value, is how much do you trust the Angel player development to develop him into something? They did okay for Joe Adele for a little bit, but he fell off this year. Zach Neto's been nice, but but we see Logan O'Hoppe, who's just a total dumpster fire. Vaughn Grissom hasn't really taken a step forward. Christian Moore hasn't really taken a major step. His hit tool gotten better, but anyways, overall points is the Angel player development has some question marks, and that's gonna be the question mark for Ballesteros now, is what can the Angels fix him? And I'm not 100% confident that they can, but the talent certainly is there. So let's move on to the next trade here. Going to talk about Jose Soriano having his breakout campaign going to Toronto for Arjun Namala, Eddie Micheletti, and Angel Rivero. I'm sure I butchered all those names, but you get my point. Let's start with you, Britton. What are your thoughts on Soriano becoming a Blue Jay?
I thought that was fascinating because I love Jose Soriano, and he's still got some team control left. He's a strikeout pitcher. So I think other than Reed Detmers, I thought that would, Freddie Peralta, Reed Detmers, I think those guys are all kind of in the same boat. I mean, Tariq Skubal is on another level, but so I like that. I think it's fascinating that the Blue Jays, traders, but buyers and sellers kind of. But I think that was a smart move. They did give up one of their top prospects, Namala, the shortstop. So, you got to give something to get something. But I would much rather have ace level pitcher than a shortstop. No matter what his prospect status is, you never know how that's going to work out, especially at his very young age. So I like the deal for the Toronto Blue Jays, and I like the deal for the Angels too. I mean, they need prospects. Like they don't. Their system is almost barren, but they've done a pretty good job of building it up. So I like it from both sides, but I like Jose Soriano a lot. I wish the Angels had traded Detmers. And remember, like we saw a blurb for a minute, like Detmers to the Cubs. Did y'all see that?
Yeah, I did.
I wonder what happened.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything.
Something happened. Yeah, I guess we'll find out at some point.
Yes, I think the report was either fabricated or grossly misunderstood. And I think it's the gray area between person with sources versus journalist that knows how to report.
Yeah, it was a Cubs fan, under an alias. Hey, you know what I'm hearing, pretending to be a journalist or something. But Reed Detmers would have been great, but Jose Soriano is really good too.
So Soriano, I don't know that I buy he's ace yet, or ace ever. But I will say, if the Blue Jays ever get him to live in the strike zone, if he can be like a 5-6% walk rate guy, I think it's there. The question, of course, is whether they can get him to that, and before he starts losing fastball velocity, into his 30s. Now he's still young enough. It's a little presumptuous to say he can't be that. I love Namala, and there's an extra element with Namala that exists with a handful of prospects, but not many. And he would be the first Indian American player to be in the big leagues. Now, of course, there have been players with South Asian heritage, Kumar Rocker being one, but it's a big deal, not even from a baseball perspective, but the amount of eyes that you can get on your team by having a big league pioneer. And I'll go back to a very obscure example. Of course, people know about Ohtani and such, but J.B. Buskauskas, the Lithuanian pitcher for the pitch for a number of teams, the Pirates. I had a good friend that was there during a summer of a bunch of Lithuanian guys huddled around a television watching J.B. Bieskauskas pitch for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Mind you, this is like a middle relief pitcher pitching in for a bad team in a meaningless game, and people in a country where no one cares about baseball watching, a pioneer of that sport. I think he's a great prospect. I think he should be on dynasty radars. I think profiles some well above average shortstop, and could be a successor to Neto if they trade him or move him off the position. But there's the marketing aspect. I think has definitely got to be part of the Angels' calculus for this trade as to why they give up Soriano for this return. I'm sure that's not lost on them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look at what Japan is an extension of Los Angeles now in terms of their fan base there. And the same can be said true that now India becomes the new other LA, the other international Los Angeles situation there with Namala. But at the end of the day, I think that one for Jose Soriano's fantasy value is pretty solid. Obviously, going to a team that's going to win, going to get win some ball games here. And at the end of the day, it's a better defense, right? You got a heavy ground ball pitcher, 51% ground ball rate this year, going to a team as a plus 18 defensive run saved as opposed to -3 from the Angels. So that's going to be big there. And then the big thing here. Not only do we see the increase in the swing and miss and the strikeouts for him, but the overall hard contact has dropped down to 37%. So he's no longer the high ground ball with high hard hit rate guy. He's also inducing soft contact to go with the swing and miss. Now, Nathan, like you said, the walks are going to be a problem here. The walks are going to be what will stop him from being an SP1, in my opinion. I think he is someone that, unless he get the walks under control, is someone who will remain in the top 25, top 30 range for me in terms of fantasy, just because, the walks will give him a bad whip floor and honestly will lead to blow-ups because, at the end of the day, if you're allowing free passes, one barrel will ruin an inning and ruin your ratios, and the whole game is cooked for your team. So I do like the move for Jose Soriano overall for his fantasy value. I just think that there's still risk involved for the Blue Jays here. They got to get him. They've got to get him right. You got to get him in the strike zone because if they can do that, then they got themselves an SP1. But it's a major, major if. And for the Angels, you love the return. Namala is a legit prospect. The dude is one of the better shortstops out there, and I wonder if this means that Zach Neto is on the move before they owe him another extension. Because if they got Namala and it looks like he's sticking at shortstop, then cool. Maybe they move Neto to the third base. I don't know. Kind of thought off the top of my head there, but anyways, that's a real interesting situation to keep an eye on there. Britton and Nathan, anything more on this deal before we move on?
No, I was just going to say Namala becomes the Angels' number one prospect in the entire organization with this deal. So good for them. One another little ancillary maybe side effect of this. Okay, so now their rotation is basically three guys: Urena, Detmers, and Grayson Rodriguez. Unless some Reed Detmers thing comes through, late. I don't know, but so. Are the Angels going to call up one of their top prospects, George Clausen, who is in AAA? He's 24 years old. He's having a really good, he's having a good minor league season. He did get called up and got straight blasted. All right, but it was only like 4 innings and some cup of coffee, and that was in May, and then he got sent back down. But I think if you're in like a crazy deep league or something like that, George Clausen might be an interesting little spec ad, because I think Tyler Bremner, their other big pitching prospect, he's still in high A, so I don't think he's coming up anytime soon. But Clausen is in AAA, so I think he's going to get promoted. So if you're in the Angels rotation business, which no one is, but anyway, but I just thought it was interesting. Like I'm in a couple of deep leagues, and I'm going to throw a buck on Clausen to see if he comes up and see how he does. What do you think, Nathan? Is that the dumbest dollar ever spent?
Oh, I guarantee you, I have many dumber dollars than George Clausen. That's a good idea for an episode. Is the dumbest FAB pickups that we've all made. But
I could
but,
fill an hour. I could fill an hour on some of mine. Absolutely.
Yeah, it'd be a 5-hour show between all of us, but and I'm contributing heavy to that. I guarantee you. I'm not even in that many FAB leagues, but anyways, Clausen, I don't know that he's ready to excel, but I think as a speculative pickup, his ceiling is so high that he's going to get the chance. You might as well grab him, and if you're in a shallower league where maybe you're really worried about your ratios, grab him and stick him on the bench for a couple starts and see how he does. If he gets rocked or the control is all over the place, whatever, no harm, no foul. You held a roster spot for a week or two. But it could go real well. I mean, he has potential. That they've done, I think, a better job of developing some of their pitchers than they have their position players too. So, not that they've had tons of them reach their total potential, but at least in terms of getting some more swing and miss in the big leagues, I think it's a totally fine dollar to spend. And if you've got the roster spot, pick him up. Shallow leagues, stick him on the bench for a start or two. If he does well, then use him. If he does poorly, well, okay, whatever, $1 down the drain.
Yeah, might as well. Might as well. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just $1, and it's just one little roster spot at the end of your bench. You're in a deep league. You never know what you're going to get. So, yeah, no. And the thing is, the Angels have always been aggressive when it comes to calling out the prospects. I mean, like, they've been known to – I mean, they were the ones that brought in – I think his name was Ryan Johnson before he even pitched a single inning in the minor leagues. Then brought him up to the bigs. And so, yeah, no, it would not surprise me at all that the guy you mentioned in single A, Brenberg, he might be called up too. Who knows? The Angels season is obviously lost. I feel bad for Mike Trout. I guess he just doesn't care about winning. I don't know why I mean, if you're comfortable where you're at, and then okay, but God, you got to think at a certain point he wants to win. He wants to play in a playoff game just once. And so, I mean, another lost season for the Angels, another wasted year of Mike Trout's greatness. So anyways, moving on to, let's see here, Luis Ariz and Caleb Killian going to the Phillies for Ramon Marquez and Marty Gayer. So let's go to you, Nathan, first on this deal for the Phillies. What are your thoughts?
So I think in a vacuum, I think Ariz is actually a fantastic acquisition for the Phillies because it's a different lineup profile. They have a lot of guest hitters, a lot of all or nothing guys, and a lot of strikeouts. And Ariz is not a guest hitter. He's not all or nothing. And he never strikes out. Now, I have some concerns about the deal. I think the return is good. Again, I like Ramon Marquez, who the Giants got back. But I think he'll definitely want to watch dynasty-wise. The problem is the Phillies, I was certain they would make another move at this point for two reasons. One is right now Aaron Nola is starting a playoff game. If they he's that DS starter. So if they end up facing the Dodgers, remember how I said Snell, Glasnow, piggyback? Well, that's Aaron Nola and his 5.6 whatever ERA going up against that Snell, Glasnow, piggyback starter. But my bigger concern is that if you look at that defensive alignment as a whole, with some ground ball pitchers on that staff, mind you, you've got Bryson Stott at third, a position where he's hardly played and graded out poorly when he has. Trey Turner's been the worst defensive shortstop in baseball this year. You've got Ariz at second, who's had a great start defensively, but has really declined with the defensive metrics over the last couple of months. You have Alec Boehm at first, who grades out very poorly there. Bryce Harper in right field, who last time he played right a number of years ago was one of the worst qualified right fielders in baseball and has a depreciated throwing arm now and presumably worse range. You've got some combination of Brandon Marsh in left or center. He grades out pretty poorly in center, okay in left. Justin Crawford, who's been a poor defender in center for most of the year. And then some combination of Brian Dela Cruz, who's been a poor defensive outfielder for most of his career. Derek Hill can go get it out there. That's the one positive. But you're basically looking at an entire team, minus JT Realmuto, where you have anyone from below average to totally defensively inept. And I don't think that's a great strategy. I have no idea why they wouldn't go out and just get a right-handed center fielder that can go get it, even if there's not much value there. Or even better, get two outfielders, put Alec Boehm on the bench and let Bryce Harper stay at first base. But for me, it's a puzzling one from the Phillies because I think it's a great move and a great start. And even Killian, I think, for some middle relief in that bullpen, I think he's better than his 4.3-ish ERA shows. But they didn't do enough. It's like they did some. Raley's a great acquisition. just why not get the outfielder and the starter or even another reliever? Like they left so much on the table. And now you look at it as a total mismatch against the Dodgers, and it's a mismatch against the Braves and the Cubs and the Brewers now. I for me, before the deadline, the Phillies would have been my second favorite team to win the National League. And now I think they've slipped behind Milwaukee, Chicago, and Atlanta with the gap in rotation and that just horrible defense.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said. And you said one thing too that I somehow found out the other day about Trey Turner. His defensive run saved, his DRS metric is literally the worst as qualified shortstops. Like, everybody always thinks, oh, Trey Turner, he's this elite hitter, elite defensive. Like, he's having a terrible year defensively, at least. So yeah, you're right. So I guess that's one of the reasons why they traded for Luis Arraez is because he was such a good middle infielder. He's an elite second baseman in San Francisco. So wherever he plays, it can't hurt, right? For defense for the Phillies, because it's been, like you said, pretty abysmal. And you've already got some shaky, pitchers like Aaron Nola who really need good defense behind them to, get through 6 innings. So yeah, you're right. When you see like what the Phillies did during this trade deadline, you're like, that's it. I can only imagine what the talk radio is in Philadelphia right now. I think mainly people are just turning it to what's going on at Eagles training camp. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're very right, and I can tell you that I've had quite a few contacts, friends, fans, etc., and the phone is blowing up on the side with almost entirely angry Philly fans. The fans of all the other teams seem to be anywhere from slightly frustrated to, and the Phillies fans are the angriest of the. And I only know that because I have like 17 unread text messages from one of them, and I'm not going through them now. Obviously, I know full well they're not. They're non-complimentary things about the front office. I'm certain. But the one thing I wanted to add on Arraez, he's had a great start to the season defensively. But if you go month by month and even week by week on his outs above average, basically all of those positive OAA came in the first month of the season. He's actually been a below average defender on OAA at second base since the first month of the season. And when you look at his track record of defense from last year, the year before, both at first and second base, yeah, I don't think that that's more than a bit of a flash in the pan. Now, is he improved defensively? There's no question. He's gone from unplayable to at least passable. But I don't know that I buy that he's actually elite with his lack of range at second base. So, it's one of those where like it's not a terrible. Like I don't think he's a train wreck there. There's some conflict with the Phillies' infield positioning. If you look at OAA and DRS, it very much disagrees on both Harper and Stott. There's balls that go through the 5 hole or the between the second baseman and the first baseman that the models disagree on in terms of blame between those two. But I agree in total. It's a bad unit as a whole, and it's some good moves like just missing that extra 2 guys that I feel like could have put them over the top.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that. And it's in terms of the real impact, the impact on real baseball. I don't think this pushed the needle for the Phillies much at all in terms of their chances at winning. But I will say for Luis Arraez's fantasy value, this is pretty good. And it's also, I think it improves his chances at winning the batting title in the National League and stopping my man Yordan Alvarez from winning the Triple Crown because he moves from one of the worst ballparks for a batting average on contact to one of the best. The Citizens Bank Park ranks 8th in park factors on batting average on balls on contact. And so that's going to be great for his batting average. He's going to be batting in a better lineup, a better ballpark. And also, guys, don't look now, but Luis Arraez now has 2 straight years of double-digit steals. And so we might be looking at a guy that can bat .330 and get you 15 steals with a lot of runs. He's no longer a single-category asset, dude. I think he's someone that has proven now to at least give you something in the steals department, and he's someone that needs some counting stats. Now he's batting in a better ballpark for his batting average. So I think this is a step up for Luis Arraez's fantasy value because luckily defense doesn't matter. So overall, that's where I'm with. And also, you mentioned at the very beginning of the conversation about Ramon Marquez being a real rock solid fantasy asset of the year in a dynasty league. He is someone you should consider picking up on your squad now. He is someone that I really liked. I think he's got really good stuff. He's someone that I've kind of had in the back of my mind, and now that he's made a move somewhere where he's especially going to go someone be pitching in San Francisco. That's awesome. And so I love that deal. I love him as a prospect. I love the deal for the rise as fantasy value as well. Your thoughts on the fantasy value of this trade before we move on to the next?
I think you nailed it. You're 100% right. Yeah, it's definitely a big boost from going one of the worst ballparks to one of the better hitter environments. And hey, that's another thing. He's going to bat at the top of the order. He's one of their 3 best hitters for the Philadelphia Phillies, which could say something about the Philadelphia Phillies. But like Alec Baum, man, stop, get out of here. Yeah, so Luis Ariz is probably going to bat second. I would imagine up there for the Philadelphia Phillies, and that's a big deal in that ballpark.
Yeah. And one more added bit and I agree the ballpark fit for the average, but also Ariz he has 4 home runs right now. If he had played every game in Citizens Bank Park, he'd have 12 home runs right now. Statcast has him at 12 expected home runs. That's triple. And that's like, you talk about double-digit steals, double-digit homers. Oh, yeah, by the way, he's almost hitting 330. The only minor detraction, and it's a minor detraction, is that if you look at the fielding lineup, and Trey Turner is going to lead off, we assume, their next 4 best hitters are Brandon Marsh, lefty, doesn't hit lefties well. Bryce Harper, lefty, hasn't hit lefties well. Kyle Schwarber, to be fair, hits lefties and righties equally. And then Ariz. And Ariz does give up some power against lefties, and you have to figure, if they're going to line up 4 or 5 hitters as left-handed, and the right-hander is going to be Alec Boehm, who's been like 25% below league average, then there's no team in baseball that's not using any and every left-handed option they've got in late game scenarios or late season scenarios. So it's going to be a lot of at-bats against left-handed pitching for Ariz, but yeah, don't sleep on those home runs. Those little cheapo, 350-foot dunkers into that right field seats. Yeah, he'll get plenty of them.
Just watch out for Philly Karen out there in the stands to stealing home run balls and punching kids or whatever it is.
Philly Karen, that's so rough, guys. Just it's a freaking baseball, man. Let the kid have it. Anyways, so now let's move on to the next deal. Now we got Joe Adell going to the Guardians for Jacob Cozart. So let's start with you, Britton. What are your thoughts on this deal here for Adell going to the Guards?
I'm a big Joe Adell fan. He was a super touted, high end prospect, and it didn't really. He never really came around. He never really met the hype. But then last year, he hit 37 home runs and looked to have figured it out, ascended to what we thought Joe Adell was going to be. Well, obviously, it's been a little bit of a down year this year. So I like him getting kind of a fresh start in Cleveland Guardians. Now, he is a righty in Cleveland, and we prefer lefty bats like Chase DeLauder, Kyle Manzardo. That's why they traded for Kyle Manzardo, wasn't it? Because he was a lefty power bat. So Joe Adell is going to slot in, right there in right field. And so they get what they need. Like Stephen Kwan isn't going to hit power. Bazana doesn't hit for power. Rocchio doesn't hit for power. So yeah, they went out there and got somebody that can crank 37, has the potential to crank 37 home runs. So yeah, I like it for the Cleveland Guardians. What do you think, Nathan?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I like it for the Guardians for a few reasons. I think the fact they got a right-handed bat in a position of need with some power. Yeah, the swing decisions, he's a really aggressive hitter, but they've got plenty of guys that get on base already. They need someone with some real thunder in the middle of the order to make managers second guess about bringing a lefty in to face some of those guys, Bazana especially, who's had power against righties. So now you've got the choice. Are you operating with a big platoon disadvantage against Joe Adell, who can hurt you with a home run, or Travis Bazana, who can really hurt you against right-handed pitching especially? So I think it's a great get. It's not a super crazy price tag either. Some of these deals had some loony price tags with some crazy prospect returns, and I'm sure we'll get into some of them as well. But it's a very Guardians move. It's on the fringes. A guy who's got tons of upside. they can't afford bona fide cleanup hitters. So they get someone who's like a kind of streaky cleanup hitter, which I think is the next best thing for them.
Yeah, and the thing is that right now, it seems to be the biggest problem is his outside contact rate. Is at 55%, it's 5 percentage points higher than last year. Because I'm looking at his quality contact numbers, barrel rate down, hard hit rate down, bat speed remains the same, hella elite, 77 mile an hour plus on the bat speed, 70% on the fast swing rate, and it's all there. But he's making too much contact out the zone because he's so aggressive, and that's why it seems like his power metrics are down this year, even though the bat speed is still there. But the good news is that he continues to have an 86% zone contact rate to go with that bat speed. I think that Jo Adell still has last year's power production in him. The question is, can the Guardians do it? Because if he can unlock that power potential, that power will play anywhere. So yes, it's not a good park fit for his power, but if he can get that barrel rate back up to 15% plus with the near 50% hard hit rate, then it doesn't matter what the hell you hit. That ball's going to fly over the fence. And so I think that he has that potential to be an elite, a power hitting outfielder for the Guardians, which is exactly what they needed. And they didn't give up too much for him. And so I love the deal for them. In terms of his fantasy value, it's the same. I think it's pretty, I don't want to say lateral because the park is a little bit worse, but the problem that he had in Los Angeles is the same problem he's going to have in Cleveland. Can he start to get those power metrics up to where we know they can be, because the bat speed is still there, and he was going to have to get those power metrics back up anyways. And so I think it's pretty much the same. And if he can tap into that power, this will be a great addition for the Guardians.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you're right. That bat speed is wicked. I mean, that thing is Stackhouse is red. Look at his walk rate.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
Let's have a like. That's the first thing they need to do when they meet with Jo Adell. Like, we need to discuss taking walks. You're in the bottom 2 percentile. Like swinging's great. We want you to hit a ton of home runs, which he's already got 16 for this year, but. You'd be like, look, you don't have to swing at everything, right? You can take a walk. That's an area of improvement. And I'll be perfectly honest with you guys. I didn't know who the heck Jacob Cozart was. Not that I'm a huge prospect person, but I looked it up. He's a catching prospect, right? So you're giving up a catching prospect who is slated to be like a reserve catcher. Okay, it's not like Adley Rutschman or anything like that. So you trade a reserve. Projected to be a reserve catcher that's for a huge prospect. Jo Adell was like top 5 at one point, right? So for that can power hit. So anyway, long-winded story short, I think the Guardians did great.
Yeah, and with Adell, it's a mentality thing with the walks. He gets into a 3-1 count, which is rare, and thinks, "Oh, I'm going to get a fastball to crush. Let me swing as hard as I can and hit it to Mars." Some guys will say, 3-1 count. It's got to be my pitcher. I'm not swinging. But the thing with Adell that I think is going to help him the most is he's going from a right-handed heavy Angels lineup where, he's facing righties in tons of big spots. And now he's going to get to face a ton of lefties because people will fear the left-handed hitters around him more than more than Jo Adell himself. And Adell, for reference, by the way, 326 plate appearances against right-handers this year, 6 home runs, 593 OPS. Against lefties, he has 130 plate appearances, but 10 homers and a 909 OPS. So he has crushed left-handed pitching, and he's going to face a lot more of that left-handed pitching now. And it's good lineup strategy, ultimately. If you have too many lefties, you find a platoon-heavy right-hander, because you still know if you have 3 out of 4 hitters coming up who are left-handed, that opposing manager in late innings is going to bring in the lefty. So find a righty who's likely to make them pay. And Adell's got that makeup. It's harder for left-handers to throw junk out of the zone to get them to pull it and play early, whereas righties can just kind of flip a slider 6 inches outside, roll it over to the shortstop, at bat's over in one pitch.
Yeah, and he's only 27 years old with another ARB year next year, and then he's a free agent. So that's also a good deal too.
Right on, guys. Let's move on to the next deal. We got Taylor Ward going to the Mariners for Alex Hop. My God, Harrison Kreensling and Brock something. I don't know. Anyway, so three prospects going back to the Orioles here for Taylor Ward. Let's start with you, Nathan. What are your thoughts on this deal for Taylor Ward?
The Ward is basically just taken a power-heavy approach and decided, what if I just stop swinging the bat, like, at all? And so his chase rate's down, but, I use the word swing decisions a lot instead of chase. And the reason I use the word swing decisions is because generally swinging at pitches in the strike zone, especially in the middle of the zone, is good. And swinging at pitches out of the zone, especially way out of the zone, is bad. So, in an ideal world, you swing at every pitch down the middle and you never chase pitch. Well, Ward is swinging, his swing rates in just about every category are near the bottom of the league. He's not swinging in the strike zone. He's not swinging out of the strike zone. He's not swinging in the chase zone. He's not swinging at pitches right down the middle. So the good news is he gets on base. And that's great if you're in a fantasy league where that's relevant. And it's great if you want to stick him at the top of your order. The problem with that is the sustainability. And he gets on base because people throw him balls because they're scared of Taylor Ward, the power hitter. And over time, people that don't swing the bat get thrown a lot more strikes. And they're not going to walk at a 20% clip over an extended period of time. Now, whether that comes back to bite him this year remains to be seen. I think it's a pretty, again, for me, one of the best value pickups of the deadline, I think, Taylor Ward. But for a fantasy perspective, yeah, I mean, he's gone from being like a solid all-rounder to just a straight on-base play. Like, that's what he is at this point. He is an on-base machine and not going to give you a whole lot else.
Yeah, he's also a terrible defender out there in left field. So Tyler Ward, he's a free agent next year. So, this is a rental, obviously, situation. And I just kind of like, I don't want to hit. I really just don't want to hit her in Seattle anyway. Power or no, generally. That's not named Julio Rodriguez, but yeah. So I don't think this moves any value one way or the other. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah. I honestly, I'm thinking Taylor Ward's a drop in standard 5 category leagues. I mean, if on base doesn't matter for you, what's he good for now? I have him in a couple of drop and holds. Drop holds.
Yeah, drop and hold now.
You found a glitch in the system.
I'm in a draft and holds, and I've had him on my bench now for a while. It's just, and the thing is, like in these draft and holds, I've gotten lucky because I drafted Casey Schmidt and Jake Bowers on these squads, so they help. Give me the power that I'm missing from Ward. But now Schmidt's out for the year. That sucks. But anyways, and so I was able to survive it. But I know a lot of fantasy teams have got to be missing that power because this came out of nowhere. I mean, it's just, he went from a 36 home run dude, 100 RBIs, and he came over to Baltimore, and I'm thinking, holy crap, he's going to hit 30 homers, have 120 RBIs, batting for a badass Baltimore lineup that at the beginning of the year, I was like, my God, I wanted as many Orioles as I could. So I thought it was going to be so good. And here we are. And he's like this lame duck on base guy going back to the 90s, trying to get on base as much as he can. Maybe he watched Moneyball before the season started and it was like, you know what? I want my own Jonah Hill scene. Like, what does he do? Well, he gets on base. And so the thing is, he was a good on-base dude even with the power before this. So he went from a good on-base guy with a lot of power to a great on-base dude with no power. Make it make sense. I don't get it. He's close to, if not a drop in 12-team leagues, in my opinion. I think that the run scoring and the potential for a decent, okay average keeps him alive in deeper leagues. But is he a drop in standard leagues now? What are you, that's the question that's been on my mind since this trade happened, because the Mariner home park is even worse for his profile now. Nathan, is he a drop to you?
Yeah, in the five categories, absolutely. I mean, if he's an on-base machine and nothing else, and honestly, I think the on-base could keep up to some level, but the home runs are going to be more suppressed. The average is going to be more suppressed. He's probably going to strike out more. Like, everything that wasn't great is going to be worse. So if you want to keep him as an on-base play, if your league rewards players who get on base, great. But if you need him to hit for, actually hit the baseball, he's not going to give you too much.
Hey, remember when the future was so bright in Baltimore? You know,
No.
they had all those stud hitter prospects, and then most of them haven't worked out. And then they signed Ward, and you're like, oh, he's going to mash. It's not called Camden Yards anymore, is it? I don't know. Well, he's going to mash in Baltimore. And then they signed Tyler O'Neill, and you're like, oh my God, it's like the Bash Brothers. Back in the Oakland Athletics days, the Bash Brothers. Have you looked at Tyler O'Neill's biceps? Dear Lord. And now they signed him to like a $40 million contract. Tyler O'Neill is a short side platoon bench bat. Where did all this go wrong? I don't know, but it did. But yeah, I off on a tangent. Yeah, Tyler Ward's a drop. He's not going to help you.
All right. Let's move this thing along. Let's touch back a little bit. We talked a little bit at the beginning of the podcast and the FanDuel stuff is Liam Hicks going to Tampa Bay for Brayden Taylor, Adrian Santana, and Jacob Kiston, whatever, 3 prospects. But the big thing here, Hicks going to Tampa Bay. Britton, I know you mentioned you had some optimism surrounding the Hicks edition here for Tampa Bay. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've been a big believer in Liam Hicks this year. He's started to hit, and he's the perfect. I guess they probably try to get Hunter Goodman. It could, but Liam Hicks is perfect because I think they traded him, but the Tampa Bay Rays had a need for center help at catcher, and they had a guy named, I call him Fiduciary. That's not his real name. Like Fettuccine. That's not it. I have like a mental issue with pronouncing this man's name. I am so sorry. It's literally like a speech impediment. But anyway, so they traded him, or they dumped him, who was their starting catcher. So now they have Nick Fortes. So they needed to go trade for somebody. So why not go trade for Liam Hicks, who is 27 years old and having a breakout season for the Miami Marlins, and now he's going to hit in the heart of the Tampa Bay order. You've got Yandy Diaz, who gets on base and hits, Jonathan Aranda, who gets on base and hits, and then Junior Caminero, who is literally a superstar. I would say in the making, but it's made. So you've got Junior Caminero and then Liam Hicks. So you've got those 4. It's so Rays, right? So you've got these 4. Really great hitters. All they need is they should have traded for Luis Arraez and put him somewhere in there. But yeah, so you've got these solid hitters, and Liam Hicks is a lefty. So you've got Yandy righty, Aranda lefty, Caminero righty, and then Liam Hicks lefty to help keep the opposing starting pitchers off track a little bit. So anyway, so yeah, I'm as you can see how excited I'm getting. I'm not even a Rays fan, but yeah, I'm excited. But I think that was a great pick for Liam Hicks, and they didn't have to give up much. Now, Nathan, what do you think? Oh, and he's from Canada, for whatever that's worth, which is nothing.
Oh, Canada.
Maple syrups. Let's. It's so delicious. Yeah, that's a really weird thing to say. Maple syrups. I don't know. Just ignore that, Nathan. What do you think about?
He can help the WBC team. They've got some. Yeah, exactly. But no, I think it's a slight negative move for the fantasy value of Hicks, only for the ballpark fit. He's a pull to power guy, so you really want that right field porch as short as possible. And the Trop is not the best offensive environment. No, Miami's not the best offensive environment either. So it's not like he's going from, Yankee Stadium, where I would have loved him to go from a fantasy perspective. That would have been just him dropping those little, short dunkers into that right field porch. But there's 2 aspects to this. One is like the return is good for the Marlins, and they've got this is definitely worth it. This is a Rule 5 pick. They've just flipped into some quality prospects with more pedigree, and Augustin Ramirez basically fills what they had with Hicks, which is hopefully they get him to be like passable behind the plate. It'll be him and Joe Mack being the defensive guy, but at some point, when are the Marlins like shopping Otto Lopez and Xavier Everett? At what point do the Marlins, a game and a half out of a wild card spot, just say, like, let's try and win some for once? I mean, they have Sandy Alcantara. He's not getting any younger. Eri Perez is healthy. That they have the top of a rotation to go head to head with some of these big teams. Sure, they're not going to be favorite with the Dodgers, but they're never going to be favorites with the Dodgers as long as they run a $60-some million payroll. So give yourself a chance. And they're fleecing their bullpen. They got rid of Hicks without replacing him with another. Like, maybe if you're going to trade Hicks, trade him for either a major league ready starter or trade him for someone to play center field at a high level instead of running Jacob Marcy out there. Like, it's for me, I understand the idea of selling high on Hicks, but it's just such a sad return for a team. They have a chance to make the playoffs and to make some noise, and they pass it up for value. Like, at some point, just go for it.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you in terms of Hicks and its fantasy value, Nathan. I'm having flashbacks to, I think it was Isaac Paredes was in Tampa Bay trying to hit home runs at Tropicana Field, and it didn't work out too well. It's the pull. He has no barrel rate, no hard hit rate. He doesn't have any power outside of what is honestly a decent pull air rate of 19.9%, but it's only 3 percentage points above league average. And so it's not like he's like an extreme pull air guy. And so, but what he's got going for him is a great hit tool. And I think that alone, batting in the Tampa Bay lineup, keeps him fantasy relevant in 12-team one catcher leagues. I think he's going to be able to provide enough, just enough on the batting average, have just enough in terms of getting some runs scored and some RBI to be a 12-team one catcher guy. But at the end of the day, though, I think this is someone I would be surprised now if he got to 20 homers total by the end of the year, which from this point on was almost unthinkable based on how well he was doing. I'm trying to pull up Paredes' numbers in Tampa. Let's see here. Had 2 seasons there. Oh, maybe this should be stand corrected. He did have a 31 home run season in Tampa Bay. But he's an extreme pull air. He's like 28, 29% on the pull air for him.
And it is more forgiving for righties in Tampa than it is for lefties. It's a little tougher for lefties to get it out to right field than it is for Paredes to dunk it over the short fence. Just right down the line in Tampa in left field, you've got that lower wall, like where they put like the buffet and stuff. Yeah, you got the people sitting there in the chairs getting home run balls raining on them. But it's a fun environment there. I got to check it out someday. But now, the one thing Hicks is going for him, at least, is the swing decisions are great. So at least he's got that. But yeah, the impacting the baseball is not going to play as well, or lack of impacting the baseball. It's not going to play as well there.
Hey, can I ask you guys one question? Why? So the Marlins are selling, and why is Sandy Alcantara not traded? I don't understand the logic of that. He's in the last year. I think he's got a club option next year. I seriously doubt they're going to exercise that option. So what can somebody help me? Nathan, do you have any idea? Like, what am I missing? Why didn't they trade him?
Yeah, so they're going to exercise the option, and then I think they're going to trade him in the offseason. But yeah, which to me, I'm all on board. So their idea is they want to have a chance to make the playoffs this year, which is why they didn't trade him in a seller's market. But they don't really feel that confident because they didn't buy anything and they sold some relievers. I think the idea was, okay, we'll call Augustin Ramirez up. It'll be a lateral move with Hicks. And then the bullpen, okay, we didn't trade anyone that important. Fairbanks is still here. He's their closer. He hasn't been great anyways. And so the hope is that they buy a ticket to the raffle and then nothing more. But Sandy, they've kind of been on this delusion train of okay, we're going to get him back to Cy Young form and then trade him. And they get, they get good offers and they don't take them because it's okay, we want ace value. And now we are, he's going to get traded with 1 year left on the deal. He'll get traded for something, but you're not getting a haul for him at this point. He's not what he used to be. Still a great pitcher, but no, I'm agreement with you, Britton. I think they've kind of botched it. And why are we selling to this degree if you're still going to keep Sandy? Because if they traded Sandy in this market, we saw Clay Holmes get a top 40 prospect, albeit with Tyrone Taylor attached. You're telling me you couldn't have gotten a top 30, 20 guy in baseball for Sandy Alcantara, and that's not worth it, but you deemed it worth it to flip Liam Hicks to the Rays for guys that won't play in the big leagues this year? It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, if you're the Brewers or the Cubs, don't you want Sandy? I mean, to help your rotation out? Yeah, it's really weird. But then I'm looking at it, guys, and he is only making $11 million. That's pretty damn cheap for a starting pitcher. I guess that's why they didn't feel like they had to flip him.
But they could have gotten a killing for him at that price. And that's, to me, if you're gonna if we see these prices for the play pitchers who are basically like worse versions of Sandy Alcantara, then imagine what they could have gotten if they made him available. And the extra year of control could have gotten a killing, but they rather, half-ass a try at the playoffs, but not really, because they're not actually going to supplement their team with anything instead. So it's frustrating as from a Marlins perspective as to why they're like, 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Yeah, and I feel you, and I'm with you on that. Their goal is to win next year. That's why they kept their core together. They got a lot of young guys. I think they're going to be a really good lineup next year with Edwards and Lopez and Conine and Casey and Alberto Hernandez and all these guys. I think Augustine Ramirez will be a year older. Joe Mack, all these guys will be another year older, another year better. And they could have. I mean, they probably could have approached the Braves and gotten one of J.R. Ritchie or Didier Fuentes to go along with maybe Eric Hartman or Can Caminetti for Sandy Alcantara, given the price point. But, ifs and buts or candies and nuts and yada, yada, yada. And we move on to the next deal here is Robbie Ray is now a Padre getting dealt for Miguel Mendez and Haniel Hernandez. Britton, what are your thoughts on Mr. Ray going to the Padres?
I think that's a good deal for the Padres because Robbie Ray's been good this year. He's he's also from Brentwood, Tennessee, where I currently live. Shout out, Robbie Ray. You and your tight pants and perfect feet representing Brentwood, Tennessee. Appreciate you. Yeah, but so Padres, great place to pitch. They've got good hitters, and so I personally don't think the Padres are going anywhere this year. But Preller always thinks that they are. But yeah, so I thought that was a great trade. If you're a Padres fan, because Robbie Ray, he'll every fifth day he'll be out there, and some days are better than others, but he's been solid this year, surprisingly solid. So, he's also a lefty, which is what they needed because King, Buehler, and they also got Casey Mize too. So, look, they got 2 good starters today. The San Diego Padres did with Robbie Ray, Casey Mize. What do you think, Nathan?
Yeah, I think they did a pretty good job without really fleecing their farm. I mean, they did give up Cass Mayfield, who's been kind of rumored to be used as trade bait for a while. But, Ray and Mize, I think teams kind of balked at both of them because the peripherals are uglier than the face stats. But it's a good ballpark. They got a good defensive unit. Ray, especially in an environment where a lot of teams are left-handed heavy, I think getting a lefty starter, if you're going to succeed in the playoffs, if you look at these other teams that we're talking about, we talked about the Phillies obviously being very lefty heavy, but having a left-hander to get to pitch to some of the Dodgers guys, even some of the Braves guys with Austin Riley struggling the way he's been, it's a big advantage. And I think that using that, it's still a good ballpark. So, but I expect some regression from Ray, obviously going from San Francisco. I think adding where there's value and not giving in to the crazy prices. And there's red flags with both of these guys for sure. But 2 quality starters for not ridiculous prices. And some of the other teams got guys with fewer red flags, but gave up far better prospects to get them.
Yeah, and if I'm on a fantasy team, if I had him on a fantasy team, I would view him as a sell high right now. I would try to trade him right now and see if you can get a solid top 25 guy for him because he has the good surface numbers, the good ERA. The strikeout number is down. The walks are up. The whip is up. So I don't know how much you're able to get for him. And because, the park factor overall, I think is an improvement. But if you look at specifically home runs, San Diego's actually, I think the score was 104 on the rolling average. And so it's still not a perfect pitcher's park. Definitely a downgrade from San Francisco. And so from a fantasy perspective, I think this is a bad move for him because I think his ratios are going to get worse. He already was a bit of a sell high for me, considering the strikeout upside isn't what it used to be. His ERA metrics are all well above his surface ERA. And now he moves to out because his road ERA is above 4. And that home ERA was really bowing that ERA. And now he's not there no more. I think that's a major red flag for me in terms of fantasy. But you made a great point in terms of real baseball. He's a lefty going against a division of teams and playoff opponents that are going to be lefty heavy, and he's going to be very valuable from that perspective. And so I totally get why the Padres went after this guy because, I say this a lot. These front offices, these managers don't give two flying whats about your fantasy team. They want to win ball games, and Robbie Ray is a nice matchup for the team that they are going to be facing. So I totally get it. Anything else on this Ray trade before we move on?
Yeah. The one thing I'll add with Ray being a fly ball pitcher in that ballpark with the home run factor means more. And it's definitely, I wrote about him in our sell high article a couple of weeks ago as a sell high. I don't think this is anywhere close to worst case for Ray. I mean, the one I was really worried about him going to somewhere like Philadelphia, who needed a starter, where playing in that bandbox, like the home run's just going to go on crazy. It's not going to help being in San Diego, but it's not the worst case. So like sell high, but not sell at any cost type of high that he might have been had he gone to a worse destination.
Yep. I feel you. So let's move on. Let's go to a big one. This one, a lot of prospects being traded for a guy who I don't know if he's worked it. Adley Rutschman, the injured Adley Rutschman, being paired up with Jake Rogers, going to Boston in exchange for Anthony Ingenson and the Enosar Kyson Witherspoon, player debating later, and Carlos Neves. So let's be with you, Britton. What are your thoughts on this deal here for the Red Sox getting Adley Rutschman?
This is the biggest WTF. I shall not curse, Paul, I promise you. But this is the biggest WTF. Like Adley Rutschman, he was a number 1 overall pick and all that. So he's got a lot of name value, but he's just kind of average as far as like fantasy goes. When he first got called up, he hit like 20 home runs, but it's never really clicked offensively. Now I think he's good with the pitching staff. So real life baseball is different than fantasy baseball. But man, did they give up a ton for Adley Rutschman, the Boston Red Sox did. That Ianson guy, I mean, he's an elite prospect. I mean, he and the other two that I can think of off the top of my head, they're also sneaky high end prospects. So I don't know. I get it from like a catcher was a position in need for the Boston Red Sox, but man, they paid the top end price to get Adley Rutschman. What do you think, Nathan?
Oh, they did, and this was a classic. You want the big fish, you're going to have to give 20% more than what he's actually worth, and someone was going to do it. A franchise type backstop is a huge piece to winning a World Series, and we saw the inquiries about Hunter Goodman and the price tag associated with his rumored trade, and Francisco Alvarez and the price tag associated with his rumored trade. And, the Orioles had been thinking about this for a while. Like they thought about it in the offseason. They watched Witherspoon's last appearance on the 29th and were impressed with what they saw, which obviously is why they were able to do a deal there. And I think for their sake, it was an inevitability that with Basallo and Rutschman both being on the same team, and they extended Sam Basallo to, where they're not moving on from him. Adley at some point was getting traded. And with the seller's market, with the other catchers not on the move, I think they really felt inclined to kind of cash out. And this return is enormous. Like, I know there's some worries about Ianson and Witherspoon's elbow health. Of course, Adley himself is not healthy right now. But I view this like, I think that you're looking at one like clear top 30 guy, in my opinion, and then 2 top 100 guys for Rutschman, which like for a guy that isn't doing a ton for you when you're fully healthy, it's a no-brainer. Now, fantasy-wise, it's a tough one because it kills him as a left-handed batter and it helps him as a right-handed batter because, of course, that ballpark is so unique. But so I think it is, kind of a slight negative. But if you look at Adley's peripherals, he's really underperformed a lot of his numbers this year to where I don't think it's a terrible buy low, given that he's in a better lineup. He's made better swing decisions this year than he has in years past. And the peripherals as a whole would show that he's been underperforming a significant bit. So, I don't necessarily think Adley's like the world beater that maybe we thought he was when he started coming up, but he's a franchise backstop at least. Like you can win a World Series, I think, with Rutschman behind the plate and he's a good enough hitter to hit in the middle of the order too.
Yeah, he's definitely he's got a great floor. I just question his ceiling. I think he's a guy that I think we can pencil in for a solid 250 batting average. 15 to 20 homers, and that's a guy that can get to 80 to 90 RBI, batting in the right lineup. The park factor there for him is going to be a lot of doubles. He's going to be able to really take advantage of those deep power alleys. So he's going to be a doubles machine in Fenway. He's going to be able to get, I think, he'll be able to rack up the RBI and stuff. But I don't think he's the elite catcher number one. People thought he was going to be when he got the call up. Now he's still really good. You know what I mean? I think he's going to be a top 10 fantasy catcher for the rest of his career. He might not be the bona fide top 2 or 3, but he is definitely someone who's going to have plenty of fantasy viability. He's someone that, and I'm trying to think of off the top of my head how the Red Sox play their DH. But he's someone that historically, gets the DH spot when he's not catching. And so that's something that he's definitely got a good enough bat to be that. And so if he can be a catcher that can get you to 600 plus plate appearances because he's DHing, that gives him the volume that he needs to be a nice fantasy asset. And I think there is a path to that in Boston, because I off the top of my head, I don't think they have someone who's just entrenched as the DH over there. And so he can get those at-bats when he's not catching to get the volume that he needs in order to rack up those RBI, in order to make up for the fact that his power is probably not all that great. So, yeah, and I think you're all right also in terms of the return here is insane for Baltimore. It feels like they're just, I don't want to say perpetually in rebuild mode, but especially as how disappointing this year has been, it's got to feel like it if you're a Baltimore fan. Just constantly racking up a bunch of young what ifs, and none of them really have seemed to work out. So yeah. Anything on Adley before we move on?
Oh, no, I was just going to say Anthony Addison immediately becomes the Baltimore Orioles' best prospect. And he's a pitching prospect, too. He's in Double-A. 48 innings pitched, 60 Ks, a 1.68 ERA. I know it's a Double-A, but he looks good. I mean, so that's great for Baltimore to get some pitching prospects because some of the guys hadn't worked out. Like remember Chase McDermott, Cade Povich. Like these were well-known prospects, and they just haven't panned out. So I like the trade for Baltimore too. And I will say, so they did get Carlos Narvaez back. So they have an experienced catcher that can play out the year. And I'm not going to look at his contract to see what his ARB status is or anything like that. But you've got somebody that can just literally slide right in, veteran, come to the ballpark and handle everything. So there's not like a total interruption of service, so to speak. But and then they also got somebody off waivers. Y'all remember this Yohel Pozo? They picked up off waivers from St. Louis, which always makes me laugh because I always go, Marco Pozo. So yeah, so I don't know. I think letting Adley Rutschman go get a new fresh start over there is good for him. It's good for his fantasy value, and it was good for the Baltimore Orioles because they get a true number one legit pitching prospect.
Yeah, you can also watch Pozo run. That'll make you laugh too. He's a fun guy to watch play because he swings as hard as he can every time. Big guy Pozo. But yeah, it's interesting to see that they basically swapped, like Jake Rogers going the other way. I think what's going to happen with Boston is that against lefties, you'll get S.E. Adley gets some days off, and they'll catch Rogers with DH Rutschman, and then against righties, it's going to be Yoshida as the DH, and then Adley will catch every game against righties. So I think he's in the lineup every day. Interestingly, they still didn't get rid of Jaron Duran, who hasn't hit a lick this year. But so it's still going to be a Yoshida DH, Duran left field probably against righties, which means Adley has to catch. But yeah, I would guess that he plays almost every game, at least until they clinch or are eliminated.
Right on. That's great for his value. He needs to be able to accumulate, in my opinion, to reach his full fantasy potential. Moving on to the next trade here, Luke Weaver moving on to the Pirates. And this was exactly where I wanted him to go. And I think he is the closer in Pittsburgh. He gets traded there for Sammy Stafura. Am I wrong here, Britton? Do you think they're going to stick with Mason Montgomery or Gregory Soto, or is Weaver a must-add right now?
He's must add for the Pirates. Great place to pitch. And I believe the Pirates, I may have made this up, or maybe it's some Twitter /X false report, but they've already come out and said he's going to close for us. So the Pirates made a deal. They gave up a pretty decent prospect, and there's something that weird that happened with the money, like the money that he's owed from the Mets, so they had to work this deal wasn't just straight up, like they had to work it out. But so when you work that kind of magic for a deal, so I think Luke Weaver for the Pittsburgh Pirates 100% their closer, and now all of a sudden they've got a really good bullpen. They've got Gregory Soto, who's a lefty, Mason Montgomery, who's a lefty, and they did trade for Camilo Duvall, who never clicked with New York, I don't think, for whatever reason. But when he was in San Fran, he was lights out. So now he's in Pittsburgh, and so you got some really good relievers, high-end relievers in Pittsburgh to help close out, hopefully good starts by Paul Skeens and Ashcraft. And Jared Jones too, man. Watch out for that guy. So yeah, things are looking good for Pittsburgh, and yeah, I think Luke Weaver 100% is going to get 90% of the rest of the 90% of 100%. Wait a minute, what's that movie, The Weatherman? Am I doing that thing now? 60% of the time it works 100% of the time. I think I just did that. All right, but I think he's 100%. Going to be their closer. That's what I meant to say.
I agree 100% of 90% of the time. No. But I think Weaver's got to get all the opportunity. I mean, he's been great this year. There is a little bit of overperformance there, but not so much to where I'm really concerned. If you listened to the pod last week, actually, you'd have hopefully listened to my advice that he would be traded to a destination that obviously was potentially likely the Pirates, and then pick them up then. If not, then it's a race to grab him. So if he's not picked up, go do it now, because he's going to close for a team that plays a lot of close ball games, and hopefully for Pirates fans, wins a lot of close ball games, and he'll get a lot of saves. Now, the return they gave up is big. And the reason why Sammy Stafura was the prospect is because the Mets pitched in $2 million to his contract this year. He's owed a little over $3 million, and are paying about half of his contract next year. So the Pirates, who are under severe ownership constraints in terms of how much they're allowed to spend, were able to get an elite reliever for peanuts in terms of money. And obviously you got to give up, the prospect that the Mets wanted. Now, Stafura, and this is why I always tell people, the pipeline rankings especially are not always the most accurate. The Mets view him as a top 100 type of prospect. They think that he's a game changer. The defense was always there, and there was some talent. And then it's just, is he ever actually going to hit? And he's raking this year, OPS over 960. He's already got 20 homers, 20 steals. So he's got the upside to be a game changer. And in Weaver's case, it's a legit closer. Their bullpen's thrown away so many games this year. I think the Pirates had a great deadline, minus I would have liked to see them get one more bat to replace Ryan O'Hearn while he was out. Maybe they could have asked the Mets to throw Jared Young in a deal and given up a tad more. But it's Weaver's a must-add. I like the deal for both teams. I think it's a great get for New York. You use Steve Cohen's money to buy yourself a prospect, essentially. And Luke Weaver's had a great year, and he's a legit closer. And if he can do it in New York, he can do it in Pittsburgh, I'm sure.
Right on. Yeah, no, like I said in the beginning, this is exactly where I wanted Luke Weaver to go. Like, man, if he could go to Pittsburgh, be their closer, he was going to be great. I mean, a 1.85 ERA, 14.5% swinging strike rate, 72% overall contact rate. Just what you want in a closer is who he is. He has closer experience, and I think he's going to be great to rock and roll. All right, so moving on, we're going to kind of bundle up some trades. So the rest of them are, somewhat significant, but we've hit all the big ones already. So let's bundle up these two here. Braxton Garrett go to the Cubs, and Dustin May and JoJo Romero going to Milwaukee?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm on handwriting.
Yeah.
So let's move to Britton. What are your thoughts on Braxton Garrett and Dustin May and their new homes?
Dustin May is fascinating because he had a stretch there where he was like one of the best hitters or best pitchers of baseball. Dustin May for the Cardinals, and then he started to stumble. So I don't know which Dustin May the Brewers are going to get, but I think it's a good for his fantasy value. It's very good because the Brewers pitching staff is great. It's a great team. Now I think it's easier to hit in Milwaukee than it is at St. Louis, but that I don't think that moves the needle too much. I think it's an upgrade for May to be with the Brewers. And I'm sorry, was it Braxton Garrett
Yes, sir.
to the Cubs? Yeah, so Braxton Garrett's fascinating because so when he got called up, he got lit up. He got hit hard, he got hit around, and but then he went back down to the minors and just kind of righted the ship. But for whatever reason, the Miami Marlins just never gave him another shot. I don't know if they were so injured by what they saw that first time around. But so now he's going to get a probably start out in AAA with Chicago, but that's a guy with upside. So yeah, so I like both where they landed. So for their fantasy value moving forward.
Yeah, Garrett, I think, is the Marlins just wanted to preserve his trade value. I think they kind of settled on, okay, well, he's getting dealt. We're using him as a piece to bring in some assets. And they didn't want to risk bringing him up to the big leagues and watching him get shelled again. So they figured out, we'll keep him in the minors. We'll let somebody else figure out how to fix him.
Right.
In May's case, I think this is a legit buy low candidate in deeper leagues. I mean, he is going to one of the best pitching development organizations in baseball. The velocity is back for him. Like, that was the real concern with the Dodgers, is that his velocity looked cooked after his injury. The velo is back. It's 2 miles an hour greater than he was on the fastball last year. Now it's just a matter, can he stop giving up inordinate amounts of hard contact? And if he does, I think he's going to be very successful. And there are very few teams that are as good at finding ways for guys who give up tons of hard contact to stop giving up hard contact than the Milwaukee Brewers. Not only because their pitching development's great, but they have a great defensive unit behind them. So I think it's a great deal. Also, keep an eye on Jojo Romero for holds. I think that he'll be in that conversation. They have some righties who are great at getting righties out, and they use Aaron Ashby more as like a fireman nowadays. So it's possible that Romero could end up getting holds against lefties, but remains to be seen whether they use Romero as the fireman and then Ashby in the eighth, or whether they, how flexible they are with the rebate. It remains to be seen.
Yep. And, go back to our podcast last time, Nathan, I called Braxton Garrett as a major, I say major, but I was really looking at to being a stash kind of guy because I was hoping he would get traded somewhere, get an opportunity. And hopefully he will in Chicago. I don't know. I mean, I would imagine that they would be using him over the guys we mentioned, Colin Ray and Javier Hassad, but we shall see. Because look, his AAA numbers have been incredible. 26.8% on the strikeout rate, a 66% overall contact rate, a 53% ground ball rate. I mean, like, he's been incredible in AAA. Like you said, maybe they're trying to preserve his trade value. I'm really interested in seeing what he's able to do as a ground ball pitcher with that great defense. I think he's sets up real nicely in Chicago. The Dustin May, man, going to the Milwaukee pitching factory, he's introduced that cutter this year, which has really had a great impact on the four-seam fastball, which now has let's see here. The cutter has a 21% whiff rate. The four-seamer has let's see here. Has an improved expected slugging against it at 327 with a 212 expected batting average against it. So we're getting better results against the four-seamer. The sweeper now has a whip rate above 30%. And he's introduced a curveball as well. He's getting against lefties as well. So he's already got the pitch mix change in motion, and I think Milwaukee's going to be able to fine-tune that to a point where I think Dustin May is probably a 12-team starter for the rest of the season. I think Braxton Garrett has 12-team upside. It's not someone adding to my 12 teams just yet, but he's someone I'm definitely keeping my eye on, because if he makes a couple starts for Chicago and he is producing, I'm picking him up real fast everywhere. So let's move on to the next batch of trades here. We'll talk about, well, I guess there is one trade we'll talk about standalone. It's a couple of them actually. So let's move on to those first. Then we'll move on. Then we'll package up the last three. So let's go with Clay Holmes going to the Cubs along with Tyrone Taylor for Jefferson Rojas. Clay Holmes in Chicago, another ground ball guy going to a great defense. Your thoughts on Holmes here, Britton?
Yeah, I loved it. The Cubs did it again. They got another solid, like we said, Braxton. Yeah, they get another solid, potential rotation starter with Clay Holmes from the Mets. And Clay Holmes, now is he? Obviously, he's been injured, but I believe he's either started his rehab starts or he's just about to be activated, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But Clay Holmes is a great get for the Chicago Cubs. They did give up somebody for him, Rojas. So, obviously you got to pay something to get something. But I really like Clay Holmes. Before he got injured, he was pitching really well, even for the Mets, which the Mets generally turn things bad. But yeah, I really like Clay Holmes for the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah, for all of this, it's all weird with the Mets. Like, you give them something good and they turn it into garbage, and you give them garbage and they'll turn it into something good. But yeah, they have, unfortunately, with the Mets, they've had excellent player development when it comes to guys at a lower level, and have just had atrocious talent acquisition when it comes to free agents. And Holmes is a rare one. Where the development has done better than the free agents, and it's not a case of like the veterans weighing down the kids that are playing well. Now, Holmes overperformed some of his peripherals pretty healthily at the beginning of the year, but I don't think that he's a real regression candidate for a couple of reasons. At the beginning of the year, tons of hard hit balls, but an extreme high ground ball percentage, and that works at the beginning of the year, especially because you had the Mets infield defense before it turned to crap. Like, when Lindor was still healthy and Semien wasn't playing like garbage defensively, and Bichette has played a good third base all year. And with Chicago, you're getting something much better than that. You're getting Dansby, Swanson, Bregman, Horner, as we spoke about. And sure, the ball gets hit hard. It doesn't matter. He just chucks that sinker up there over and over again, lets him hit it. If you keep hitting it, it's going to be on the ground. Maybe you get a single or two. The key for him, he's got to limit the walks, because when he walks people, gets behind in counts, people can sit on the fastball, and that the guy leadoff walk, cheap single. Okay, now you've given up 2 runs. As far as his rehab goes, the Mets could have started him in the big leagues on Sunday. They had him pitch for High A Brooklyn instead. The reason why is because he was only cleared for about 70, 75 pitches, and they knew that if they activated him off the injured list, then he couldn't be placed back on a minor league rehab assignment. But by waiting, and now the Cubs have the option of using him for one more rehab assignment if they want to before activating him. But he's fully healthy. It was a leg fracture. Had a comebacker off his leg a couple of months ago. And so the Cubs could activate him. His day to start would either be Thursday or Friday. If not, then it would be the beginning of the week after if they have him do one more rehab start.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, I think that he has a couple of whip offerings in the changeup and the sweeper that are both over 30%. So now they introduce the ground balls for that elite Cub defense to soak them up, and then he also gets a little swing and miss to strike out upsides a little bit better than it has been in the past. Next trade here, Elliot Ramos going to the Yankees. Oh, sorry, one more thing.
I wanted to add one more thing, and I don't know how sustainable this is. In fact, I know it's not sustainable. But since the 26th, a little over a month, Yordan Alvarez is the second best OPS in baseball. Do you guys know off the top of your head who has the best OPS in baseball? About 200 points higher than Yordan Alvarez in that span.
Oh, God, that's a great question. Can you give me a hint?
The hint is going to give it away, but he was traded with Clay Holmes in this trade to the Chicago Cubs.
Oh, Tyrone Taylor?
Yes, has an OPS over 1,300 in that span. He's been the hottest hitter in baseball by a mile. Mind you, this is a career fourth outfielder type. But go take a look at Tyrone Taylor's numbers. His OPS is now actually over 800. He's hit more home runs this year in the past 3 weeks than he has in the past couple of seasons combined. He's been on the hottest stretch of his major league career. Now, do I expect Tyrone Taylor to be a fixture in your lineup? No. But you might as well pick him up in deep leagues until, this subsides. The numbers are off the charts. His peripherals are not great. He's barely just pulling like every ball in the air and like just mashing home runs down the left field line incessantly. And that won't play in Wrigley. But for a couple weeks, Cubs on the road, you never know. Maybe you get 4 more fluke homers out of him from like the most fluky hot streak you've ever seen in your entire life, which truthfully is the only reason the Mets got anything for him, let alone, a small part of Jefferson Rojas.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've always thought of Tyrone Taylor kind of a weak side platoon kind of guy, but hey, if he's hot, he's hot, and you always got to ride the hot hand. That's how you win fantasy leagues sometimes, especially in head to heads. So, Britton, let's talk Elliot Ramos and the Yankees. What are your thoughts here?
I love it. I think they needed a righty outfield bat because, like we talked about Aaron Judge. I'm looking for information, and they say the last thing I see is that their scan, their MRI scan shows healing, but he's still not cleared for any type of baseball activity. So, the proof is in the pudding. And if the doctors aren't allowing him to do anything remotely baseball related, then that kind of worries me. And I say kind of, it super worries me about what they're going to be able to get out of Aaron Judge with that stress fracture in his ribs. So I don't know, but yeah, so they needed an outfielder, so they went and got one, and Ramos. I believe it's Elliot Ramos, correct? I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But so I apologize if I'm not. But yeah, so Ramos is a righty bat that's going to plug into the outfield. And looking at roster resource, they've got Trent in center, and then Ramos, and then Spencer Jones, who I really like. Spencer Jones, he's kind of been on a little hot streak himself, when he got called up because Stanton and Judge are injured, and Cody Bellinger. So, that's another kind of like X factor too. Like, what's going on with Cody Bellinger? He was just put on the IL, so I don't know. I'll have to research into that. But yeah, Ramos, 26 years old, talented. Wasn't he the leadoff hitter for the Giants, I believe? So yeah, I think that's a good trade. They needed an outfielder, and they went and got a good one. What do you think, Nathan?
Yeah, I'll call quickly on Bellinger. It's a hamstring. I think that's more in the 6 to 8 week neighborhood. It's a pretty bad hamstring strain. And of course, the Yankees usually have somebody to DH, so he's going to have to be healthy to play left field to come back, Bellinger, which is fine. His value comes from his defense. Ramos is not a good defender. I love Elliot Ramos, too. Puerto Rican as well, so representing there. But he's not a good defender. His swing decisions are not the best. He's very aggressive in the zone, at least. His trends have been not great, and it almost mirrors an aging player. Like, his bat speed is down. His pull fly ball rate is the lowest of his career. He's chasing more than he usually does. So, like, if he wasn't so young, I would think he'd be like, it looks like a 33-year-old progression or 34-year-old progression. But I love the deal for the Yankees, at least. I mean, he can pepper that left field porch if he gets back to his pull approach. He's got a ton of talent in the bat, like a ton of thunder. The defense isn't great, but from the Yankee perspective, they're going to get at least one of these guys. So when Bellinger comes back, you've got a risk with Spencer Jones, a risk with Jason Dominguez, a risk with Trent Grisham, a risk with Elliot Ramos. One of them is going to pan out. One of them is probably not going to work out. Once you get everybody healthy, if at least one of them starts turning into a world beater, okay, there's your extra outfielder. And that's how you go into the postseason. And, if Elliot Ramos struggles and let's say he's 650 OPS and can't handle New York, it's not the end of the world. He's a bench bat. So it's a high risk move, but the Yankees have so many outfielders, they can afford to take it.
And not only that, the park factor going from San Francisco to New York is a big boost for his numbers.
Especially with the opposite field approach this year that he's had. He can, instead of having to hit it like 415 over that crazy wall in right center.
Yeah. He's got the barrel rate. He's got the hard hit rate. He's got the exit velo. He's got slug. Yeah. So they got a righty power bat.
Yeah, and I've always liked Elliot Ramos. He's definitely someone who I've targeted from my fantasy teams a lot. Defense doesn't matter in fantasy, and that's his big retraction there. He had some injury issues to begin this season, so hasn't quite. He's been healthy for a while now, so I guess he's gotten to a chance where he can, pick up the pace, start getting to a bit of a groove. But I think he's someone who could really be someone to watch out for in the second half, especially batting in that Yankee lineup. And I don't know. I was kind of hoping they would roll with Jason Dominguez and Spencer Jones for the rest of the year and to kind of see what the young kids can do because I like them both. I really want to see what Spencer Jones looks like with some type of extended sample size because he strikes out so much. I mean, the hit tool on Jones is just so bad, and it's like really bad. It's like 60% overall contact, like 19% on the swing and strike. But my God, when he makes contact, it go far. So, anyways, but not going to get my wish. That's fine. But let's talk about what I think is probably the last standalone trade to talk about before we kind of go through some rapid fire ones. It's Foster Griffin getting dealt to the Guardians today. Nathan, let's start with you on Griffin. What are your thoughts on this trade?
Well, the age is something to keep an eye on with Griffin because he's obviously been in the Rookie of the Year conversation. Now, of course, changing leagues is obviously probably puts an end to that possibility. But he's had a great year, and this is a guy who's like pinged around Asia. He's really not stuck since he's left Kansas City and gone and moved around. But it's a command pitcher. It's a command first left-hander, keeps the ball on the ground well, walks almost nobody, and that's really his game. Now, I am a little bit worried about some regression. There's no question there's overperformance with him. Cleveland is not the best place for a left-handed starter to, go ahead and continue overperformance. But at the same time, walking nobody is a great resource. And the fact that he gets a lot of ground balls is going to allow him to slightly overperform. But to me, it's a slight sell high. I think he'll have a better chance for wins now that he doesn't have like an incendiary bullpen behind him, blowing every lead he ever gets. But so I guess you want to keep him like for that reason. Sure, Cleveland's bullpen is nails. And, if he actually keeps them to a good level, but the expected ERA metrics more close to 4 than this. And I don't know with the unprecedented amount of innings as well, that he's necessarily a guy I want to be holding crazy stocks heading into the second half.
Yeah, I think this is fascinating. This is one of my favorite trades for the Cleveland Guardians and Washington Nationals. But Foster Griffin, obviously he came over from Japan on a 1-year deal, $5.5 million, which is great considering he was an all-star, I think, for the Nationals. So, you paid him $5.5 million. He played well enough, so now you're going to flip him because he's a free agent after this year, right? Yeah. So now you're going to flip him to the Guardians, and you get 4 prospects if you're the Nationals. 2 lefty pitchers, a righty, and then an outfielder. And they're not like high-end guys; they're not even close. But they, 3 prospects for basically, a 1-year dude, and then so I thought that was smart. And if you look at it from the Guardian side, this is a good trade too, because like Tanner Bibey's been up and down, Slade Chaconi's up and down. Now they do have Gavin Williams, who I love. Me some Gavin Williams. I get on the Gavin Williams love boat. No, wait a minute. Well, the love train, right? Choo-choo.
It could be a boat too.
It could be. There was a TV show called The Love Boat. And, I'm sure there was a lot of romance and, whatever. But anyway, so Foster Griffin, he's obviously been having a great year. I think you could point to a lot of his under the hood numbers as mainly average, if not low, below average. But his walk rate is elite. And I think that's going to work well with his ground ball tendencies in Cleveland. So, yeah, he generates grounders. The Guardians have a solid defense, and the Cleveland knows how to get the most out of their pitchers. So, yeah, I think this was really interesting. It was so smart of the Nationals to flip them, get 4 prospects. Hopefully, 1 or 2 turns out, and then on the flip side, then the Guardians get a really cheap. Yes, he's a rental, but maybe they can sign him. But that division is close. Like the White Sox, believe it or not, are winning that division, but we're talking like 2 games. Like the Cleveland Guardians can win that division, and let's see what happens in the playoffs with Gavin Williams and Parker Messick. So I really like this trade for both sides. Very long-winded story short.
Yeah, no, and the White Sox added too, so there's pressure on them, and ultimately it comes down to, for me, is Foster Griffin good enough to start a playoff game for them? And I think the answer is yes. I think he's shown that he's a good enough guy. You obviously don't want him a game 1 game. I think he's their game 3 or maybe it's game 4. They could bring Gavin Williams back because of that extra day that exists in the AL this year. But he's good enough to start a playoff game. And that ultimately, you don't give up elite prospects. You get a potential playoff starter. Worst case scenario, he's a bullpen piece in the post, and at least helps you get there in a close division. White Sox added to, and I like this move a lot from the Guardians.
Yeah.
Right on. For me, Foster Griffin, 6-pitch arsenal, real deep arsenal. You got multiple pitches that are at 30% are better on the whiff rate. So he's got some swing and miss to his profile. All those pitches, it's all about sequencing. and inducing soft contact and getting out of innings quick. And I think that can play very well. I mean, now you got Gavin Williams, and then you got Parker Meskett, Joey Cantillo, sorry, and then Foster Griffins. That's a solid 1 through 4 there. And with the White Sox, they made a couple moves. It'll be real interesting to see who wins that AL Central. Let's talk about, I'm going to name 2 trades here. Well, first, let's go around quickly on Jeff Hoffman going to the Twins. Is he the closer? Britton, what do you think?
100%, 90% of no, I'm not doing that again. I promise. Yes, 100%. Jeff Hoffman should close in Minnesota. I believe Gomez. He was actually doing pretty well, but yeah, Hoffman's under the hood stuff is still elite, regardless of his struggles. So yeah, I think Jeff Hoffman 100% is the Minnesota Twins closer. What do you say there, Nathan?
Yeah, I agree there. In a way, he's almost the anti-Foster Griffin of the reliever in that, Griffin has a couple pitches he gets whiffs on and he saves them for 2 strikes. And Hoffman's problem is that he's gotten into bad counts and he uses his swing and miss pitches early in counts and then gives up damage because he has to mix it up and, gets hammered on a heater. But it's just the command's got to get a little better, and the under the hood, the whiff, the strikeout rate is elite now. Like, just, limit the damage a bit more, try and get into better counts. Obviously easier said than done, but I think he's a legit closer. If you can get his head right, hopefully he's not too scarred from last year in the World Series. That's the one thing that's kind of sticking in my head with him. But I think I would definitely add him now as a fantasy closer. If he's available, the Twins are a good enough team to where, they should be getting enough opportunities for him. And don't be scared by the ERA. He's been pretty unlucky this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, like, when it comes to closers, under the hood stuff is nice, but they're 1 inning sample sizes. And I think Hoffman, we might be at a point now where it might be a mental thing with him because of, while he was the closer for the World Series run for him last year, it was still flying by the seat of your pants every time he came out. It's like, oh shit, what's going to happen now? And then it all just kind of fell apart for him this year. And so he might just be mentally better for the 7th and 8th inning than the 9th. And because he had a full season last year, had a bad ERA. This year it wasn't any better. The strikeout stuff is there. The swinging strikes are there. The metrics are all there. It's just he hasn't put together on the surface. And when it comes to bullpen arms, I think surface numbers matter more than underlying metrics because it is a small sample. It's 1 inning. It's 1 batter. It's 1 pitch that can change the whole thing. And so for me, he'll probably end up being the closer. 12-team leagues, you have to add him just because he does have the stuff to be an elite guy. But, I don't know how confident I would be if I have Yoandris Gomez shares. I'm holding on to them because if he comes out and he blows 2 or 3 saves or just a couple saves right off the gate, the Twins might go back and Hoffman gets the 8th and Gomez gets the 9th because Gomez has been pretty good. He hasn't been bad. And so he's definitely earned the right to remain in the conversation, but I'm not dropping Gomez right away. Don't do it because Hoffman could easily go back to being the home run prone dude, no matter how good he has been. It's PTSD is there for me when it comes to Hoffman as a closer.
And the benefit of having Hoffman as a setup guy too is if he gets into trouble and we've seen his outings, they down spiral. There's a stigma. You take the closer out of the 9th inning with the lead and you take him out before he blows it. Oh, the manager doesn't trust him anymore. There's no stigma out of taking a 7th inning guy out after the 7th inning where he's given up a couple walks and gotten a hard fly out. So you don't have to worry about the mental side. If you start him, maybe let Gomez continue to close. Maybe then he loses it. I personally think they view him as the closer, but I agree with if I would do what you suggested if I were in charge of the Twins.
Right on, guys. Let's round it out with one more trade. I'm a homer, so I've saved the best for last. The only trade the Astros made got Dalton Varsho. Flipped him for Spencer Arrighetti. So 2 interesting names being flip-flopped here. Arrighetti going to Toronto, Varsho now an Astro. Britton, what are your thoughts on Varsho as an Astro and Arrighetti as a Blue Jay?
This is straight up fascinating is what this trade is. So Dalton Varsho, an elite defender, outfielder, which is what Astros They needed an outfielder. Spencer Arringhetti. Now, I actually had him and dropped him, frankly, in a couple of leagues because he had a really good start, a really good set of starts, like earlier on in the season. Then he got blasted, and so I don't know. But Spencer Arringhetti, like he's shown stuff, like he's shown it. He's shown he can be very, very good, like a starting five rotation, SP3. But he's also shown he can get 8 earned runs in 2 innings and walk you, me, your brother, and your cousin and your Meemaw. So it's fascinating. I think it's a gamble by the Blue Jays that they can unlock Spencer Arringhetti. And the Astros know what they're getting with Dalton Varsho. They're going to get an elite defender in the outfield. So yeah, this is fascinating to me. What do you think, Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, Arringhetti's definitely a gamble because there's a lot of cool attributes. He's got a wide pitch mix, strides really far down the mound, huge, really difficult like arm angle for a guy that has that arm slot and has that level of extension is very unique. But again, the command's not there. The thing with me that makes this a worthwhile deal for the Blue Jays, Varsho is a great defensive player, but his arm has been shot for a couple of years now. He has one of the weakest arms in baseball, struggles mightily to throw, and he's kind of been swinging a pool noodle for a couple of years too. So for me, the saving grace with Varsho has always been that he has incredible pull fly ball rate, and it's kind of gotten away from him a little this year. It's down over 9%. I want to see him continue to pull the ball because in Houston, left-handed and right-handed, obviously especially right-handed, but even left-handed pull hitters can make a lot of hay getting that ball to straightaway right field. It's a pretty hitter-friendly ballpark if you pull the ball in the air. And I think there's a way that the Astros can get more offensively out of Varsho. Like he still has the contact skills. He still, has the same ability. He's 30 years old. It's not like he's washed. So for me, it's a kind of like peripheral ad. At worst for the Astros, it gives them a good glove in the outfield. At best, they could get a guy with the 700s OPS if he starts pulling the ball in the air more. The question is how much chase is he giving away? But I think it's a marginal win-win. Like the Astros never really made it work with Arringhetti. Let the Blue Jays have a try. Blue Jays give a guy who's had some difficulties producing offensively, and he's in a better ballpark now, Varsho. So at least he can, go find that big center field and maybe find the short corners with some short fly balls.
Yeah, the Astros needed defense. They're one of the worst defensive teams in baseball, so they needed the defense of Varsho. And I also think I called Varsho one of my an interesting dynasty buy low about a month or so ago on the podcast. And the reason being is because he once had a lot of bat speed and really good hard hit metrics, but now he slowed the bat down on purpose and is making more overall contact. He's really changed his approach to the plate, and I think it takes time for a hitter to get used to that new approach. You can't just go into the majors with a whole new approach, especially, getting close to age, or he is at 30 now. It is one of those situations where it's like an old dog trying to learn a new trick here, but he's improved his hit tool, and the bat speed isn't slow now. If my computer has gone out on me, but if I remember, his bat speed's still around 72, 73 miles per hour with a fast swing rate, I think, was in the 20s. And so even with the slow down bat, it's still a pretty fast bat. And so I think there is still power potential with an improved hit tool, batting in a Minute Maid Park or Dakin or whatever the heck it's called now. He has, I think there is some potential here for him to be a decent power bat, get some RBI, and be a better hitter than what we saw in Toronto because he has slowed down the bat on purpose to make more contact, and the bat speed is still pretty solid. So I do think there's still a good bat in there to go with good defense. And so from that perspective, it's a win for the Astros in real life. I think it's also a win for Varsho's dynasty value, or fantasy baseball value this year, and 5 outfield setups. I think he's someone you really want to make sure he's not floating on your wire in those setups because I think he's very valuable there. And then for Arringhetti going to Toronto, it's just a matter of can they keep the damn thing in the strike zone. Arringhetti, if you go to the game logs, man, there are his good outings. He's got a really good strike rates at 60% plus. And then the other outings, it's like 50% on the strike rate. And you're just like, he can't find the zone. And so that's going to be the thing with Arringhetti is can he just throw some strikes? Sometimes at the analysis, you can look at all the numbers so your eyes are crossed. And sometimes it's just as easy as, can he throw strikes? If he can throw strikes, he's going to be fine. If he doesn't throw strikes, it's going to be a dumpster fire. And so, we kind of saw the same thing with guys like Jose Soriano last year. Can he throw strikes? Edward Cabrera this year. Can he throw strikes? Yuri Perez, you know what he started to do? Throw strikes. And that's why he's doing well. And so sometimes it's just as simple as that. And that's what it is with Arrighetti. Guys, is there any other deal out there that we did not touch on that you want to touch on before we head out?
Yeah, I got one. This is also in the WTF. Marcelo Meyer for Eric Miller. Mayer, excuse me, but Marcelo Meyer for the Boston Red Sox. He was like a top. No, let me make sure I get this right. In the draft of 2021, he was a fourth overall pick in 2021, and now he's being traded for Eric Miller. And I mean no shade to you, Mr. Miller, or to anyone in your family. Eric Miller, Eric with a K, is a reliever. So you're trading a fourth overall pick for a lefty reliever. Now, things have not gone great for Marcelo Meyer's major league career so far. I totally understand that. But, I mean, is Caleb Durbin, like, shipping Meyer out of Boston? Like, what's going on here? Like, they need to they're just talk about just giving up on somebody. But I look at it this way. Like, Meyer's stock, if it's going to improve, this is going to improve it because, as we mentioned earlier, Luis Rise got traded, so there's a need for him now, right? So yeah, all the Giants had to do to get someone with a top 20 prospect pedigree is to give a lefty reliever that they don't really need anyway because they're not going anywhere. So I don't know, Nathan. I literally said WTF when I saw that one. What'd you say?
I had the same reaction, and it's like you're looking at a guy who's had, this is not like a guy who was drafted and then he was terrible in the minors. Like, he was one of the top prospects coming up through the minors until his promotion. And I've been the low guy on Meyer. I quite frankly didn't really think he merited that ranking, and I still don't believe that they traded him for a reliever. Eric Miller is great. He's had a great season so far. He walks the ballpark, but other than that, keeps the ball in the ballpark and strikes a lot of people out. That's all well and good. But it's crazy to me that they're essentially giving up on him. Now, the only thing I can see is Miller, obviously with his potential, and how many big left-handed hitters they'll have to face to get through the American League. And just the best hitters on many teams being left-handed nowadays. I guess, okay, there's your advantage. We've seen how many of the top lefties in the game have been neutralized by those guys in the playoffs. But it's crazy to me to justify that return. Like the Rutschman, at least you're getting a franchise catcher. Who cares? You give up a couple pitchers. But Eric Miller, like, great lefty, don't get me wrong. But must you give up a guy who is regarded as like a four-tool, like potential future star, like 2 years ago, just because he had a rough, handful of ABs in the big leagues?
Wild.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's rough. It's rough. I got him on my dynasty squad, and I next year is going to be the make or break year, in my opinion, for him. And unfortunately, going to San Francisco is not going to help. And so I'm happy that he's going to get the opportunity when he gets healthy. But at the same time, he had the opportunity in Boston already. It didn't quite work out. Now, it's just 1 year. He very easily could just figure it out and it'll just click. Prospect progression is not linear, all that lovely stuff. So, it's still possible. And I still think it's a great trade for the Giants because you don't need Eric Miller anymore. And Marcelo Meyer is definitely a guy that's got great prospect upside. So it's a great deal for them there. Another deal that I touch on real quick, Tyler Wells going to the Rays. My God, that bullpen is ridiculous. Brian Baker, Garrett Clevenger, Kevin Kelly, and now you add Brian Baker, and you got Edwin Uceta potentially coming back this year to add on to it. Wow, that's a hell of a bullpen. It sucks for his fancy value because now he's not closing. That's Baker's job. And the thing is that, like, is he a holds ad? Because he got so many guys in that bullpen stepping on each other's toes. He can have a week where he's got 4 holds and he won't get another hold for a month. And so that's, anyways, I think that's great for the Rays there. Anyways, y'all, anything else before we head out?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I wanted to mention one quick thing that I thought was interesting. So Luis Garcia Jr. got traded to the Yankees. The Washington Nationals went ahead and called up prospect Abimelec Ortiz, who is a power hitter, a lefty power bat, who in the minor leagues had a 19 K rate, which isn't going to hurt anybody's feelings as long as he's hitting for power. And I think he hit like 18 home runs in the minors. So, and what was fascinating to me, and one of the reasons why I bring it up is because they're batting him second in his major league, or I think he has like one at bat, major league at bat or something like that. But anyway, so on this call up, they're just plugging him right in the 2 spot in the 2 hole. Now that he is they're playing Aaron Nola, who's a righty, so I don't know if they're going to platoon him with Chaparro. But anyway, just real briefly, I thought that was fascinating. If you're in the market for a sneaky little power bat that might hit second for the Washington Nationals.
Yeah, and that lineup is fantastic, and I'm glad you brought that up. And actually, funny you mentioned that, Paul, because when you asked about trades to bring up, there were a couple of holds ads, and I was going to mention Wells, with the caveat being that they're going to turn him into a stud. There's no question. I mean, they did the same with Baker. Wells has tremendous stuff, maybe even a better platform. Wells is better now than Baker was at this time last year, so there's a better platform there. The one trade that I think is going to result in a ton of holds because of the other deals they made is Huascar Brasaban going to the White Sox, and they dealt away Sir Anthony Dominguez. It's clear to me that Grant Taylor is going to close, which is obviously he becomes a must-have. But if you look at the right-handed relief options, Brasaban is by far not only the best righty, but the best reliever in that pen period outside of obviously Taylor himself. And given the fact he can go multiple innings, it's to me it is definitely one. If I want holds, I'm looking for Brasaban. And funnily enough, there's actually a interesting dynasty I want to keep an eye on. Gabe Davis, who's a 6'9" right-handed starter who strides like almost 8 feet down the mound and throws 100 miles an hour. Unfortunately, he has no clue where it's going, so we'll see if the Mets can figure that out at some point. But still an interesting one nonetheless. But I would keep an eye on Brasaban. There's a couple of others, Romero, Jeffrey Yan, guys to keep an eye on. We'll have you for the hold spies. But definitely like 15 or 20 around the league that I'm sure will change after this whole shakeup.
All right, y'all. Well, that brings us in the podcast, y'all. First, big thanks to Britton Allan for joining us today. Find him on the Pallazzo Podcast with 2 L's on YouTube, and that's where you'll find his work, man. It's a great podcast, a lot of fun. Those guys do a great job. Nathan Baker writes for us here at Sports Ethos, and you can find him at L Extra Inty as well, doing his thing, covering I believe the Tigers for them. And then also make sure, and also, of course, you find me on Sports Ethos. Follow me on Twitter at PaulW_34, Nathan at NBakerNGB, and then Britton Allan at Britton Allan. This Britton. There's an A in Allan, AAALLAN. And so make sure you follow these guys. A lot of great content that you don't want to miss out on. So thank y'all both so much for joining me, y'all. It's a long podcast, but well worth it. So much information. I hope y'all enjoy listening to it as much as we enjoyed recording it. I am Paul Williamson. This has been Fantasy MLB Today, a Sports Ethos presentation brought to you by FanDuel. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.